right. I am live. What's up? All right, we're still doing the boomer tech thing, so I have to go to YouTube, copy the link, and paste it onto Twitter. This is the pre-show. You are getting the secret pre-show right now while I'm posting this on Twitter. How's it going, guys? I can't actually see the chat because I'm posting the link on Twitter. But I hope it's going well. I was in the studio all day. I was looking forward to doing this pretty much all day. Okay, now I'm going to YouTube. I'm going to my own live stream and paste it onto Twitter. Copy and paste my own shit onto Twitter. Silicon Valley nerds totally failing. All right, let's see if it goes right now. All right, I tweeted that shit. Nice. Okay, let's go to 11 people. The 11 coolest people are here right now. Do you guys hear me? Nice, Mr. Brown. Based pre-show. This is the based pre-show. Yes. Okay, I'm going to pull up OBS so I can see both the chat and OBS. All right. I guess I could have done this before. How's it going? Can the chat hear me? Can you guys hear me? I'm probably going to do like, oh, there's feedback? Oh, maybe it was just for a second. Yeah, I had the stream playing for a second because it's Boomer Tech Hour first. Can you guys hear me? How's it going? Talk about something random. What was I doing today? I was like working all day on graphic design stuff. Drew a unicorn for someone Twitter famous. You guys will see that eventually. Book cover stuff, commissions. I have some dope graphics about to come down the pipeline. You guys don't even know. It's so sick. Yeah, I'll just tell you guys. I'll tell you guys what people come in. I got this Russian angel graphic coming up. It's so tight. Actually, I have this book here of Russian icon paintings, and one of my favorite things is looking at like super old artwork from like the 12, 13, 1400s and taking like a really, really, really tiny detail like off in the corner or something like that and turning it into like a full graphic. And that's what I did. I saw this, it was an icon and there was this Russian angel in the corner and she's in this, I don't know if it's a boy or a girl actually. I guess they're androgynous. They're in this circle holding this paper and I saw it. It's like an inch big. It's like this tiny thing on the page. And I drew it out and it looks awesome. I'm definitely going to put it on a shirt or something. All right, we got 27 people. We are close. Let's, you guys have been here. I don't like making people that are on time wait for people that are late. We're going to do it. It's happening. Yeah, I have really hairy arms. It's the, it's the testosterone, bro. What are you going to do? All right, we're doing it. All right. Boom. Yeah. What is going on, people? How's it going? I'm doing great. I'm getting amped. I'm getting amped for spring. I know it's like winter. Is that taboo? It's February. We're close to spring. I kind of just want to jump in. Since I have noticed that it's really easy for these to go really long, I kind of just want to jump right in. I'm just going to look at the chat, make sure everything is chill. Someone's got the bell on. You got to have the bell on, of course. Of course, I know what that means. All right. So, yeah, if you watched the first two, then you saw me go over the tools in the studio, saw me go over the paints in the studio. So we've pretty much just been talking about tools and things like that. And I had a bunch of ideas for just, more kind of introductory stuff. Like I could talk about like mixing paint and talk about all this stuff, but I thought we should just jump in and actually like do some images and see how it goes. So that's what we're going to do right now. I'm just going to put the chat over on the side. I think it's funny because like when I'm doing this, I'm looking at the chat and I can like talk to you guys, but later if people watch it, they're like, yo, what are you talking about? Of course it's for the live people, obviously. You guys can hear me, everything's good. Yeah, I think we're good. If anything isn't working, just put it in all caps in the chat and I'll see it, I guess, eventually. Also, I got this camera. It is like insanely high quality. Like I can get like these crazy details and show you guys like really detailed stuff. And eventually I'm going to have to kind of figure out how to make it always focus on what I want. It works based on contrast. So that's why I have everything all white. In case you missed it, I do have the nice wood background. Oh yeah, look at the wood. Ooh, secret graphic. You guys know about that? No, you don't. Not yet. But for now, it's going to be all white, so you can see it's focused on my hands now. So it'll probably take me a few episodes to like get everything perfect with the camera. I did a test one yesterday just to like record for myself. And I almost got it so where like when I held something up, it would like automatically focus on it and you can see the brush strokes and everything. But it'll probably take me a few times to get it perfect. This one's a test one. Well, I'm kind of just going to call them all test ones until it becomes perfect. So you guys are in on the ground floor. And let's do it. What I'm holding right here, this is a little watercolor block. If you watched the first episode, you know what that is. If you didn't, basically it means that this is some really thick watercolor paper. And you can actually see there's like this ream of glue on the side. The way this works is it's a stack of paper and it's glued down on at least two sides so that while I'm working, the moisture isn't going to cause the paper to work. It's kind of a review from like the first episode, but for like regular paper, if I just took, for example, like a piece of printer paper that I got right here, if I was painting on this, you can obviously imagine it's not going to stay flat. As the paint dries, it's going to like warp and twist the paper. You don't want that, so that's why this is glued down on the sides. It's called a watercolor block. And I like dropping things about the materials in case anyone gets excited and wants to go pick up some stuff themselves. So if you go get watercolor paper, you probably should get it on a block. I wouldn't get like the loose pages because it's going to warp. You're going to get frustrated. Want to give a nice pic to your mom, to your girlfriend. It's on the wavy page. No one likes that. Not good optics. So you want the block situation. So yeah, I'm just going to jump right in. The other thing that's kind of interesting about this process and me figuring out how exactly I want to talk about this and do it is that I wasn't sure exactly how to approach image making live on the stream, because on the one hand I could sit here and grab the pencil and draw out something and try and make it like get the whole drawing going, and then we're drawing for an hour and you can see the drawing, and then the rest of the stream is just me. Let's get it focused. Nice. It's just me like filling in this like like a coloring book page, like do the whole drawing and then just color it in all the spaces I've already drawn out. It's kind of boring to watch. Do you need to watch me do like coloring book status for like an hour and a half? Don't think so. On the other hand, just totally winging it, I wasn't sure if I should do that either. But have an idea in mind, like maybe I have a sketch that you can't see. That's kind of lame if I have this picture I'm looking at and I'm kind of just copying it. So ultimately I figured, yeah, just like winging it and going for it live on the stream would be the best thing to do. One reason why I wanted to do this was to talk about creativity and just being creative in general. And I think that I forget if I mentioned this in one of the earlier episodes or not, but I think that there's kind of a misconception about how creativity works in general. That's just my own opinion. But I think that most people probably imagine that you have this idea in your head that I think, oh my God, it would be so cool if I painted a girl with like a fish coming out of her head and there's a mountain and a sunset and I'm going to do it. And then you sit down and you translate that perfect idea out of your head onto the page, and that's what the creative process is like. But really it's not like that. The ideas that you get actually come out of engaging with the physical materials. So like if I sit down and I already have an idea in my head, that idea already exists virtually in my mind. So what you're going to be looking at the end, it's kind of going to be like a stale copy of this idea that already existed virtually in my head. And it's not going to be that exciting to look at. That's just like the reality of making images and stuff. But if I'm actively engaging with what I'm doing and kind of winging it a little bit, then it has this like freshness and life that allows new ideas to come in. Not to be super cliche, but it's kind of like the most like quoted thing from Art of War by Sun Tzu is if you have a plan already, then when something happens, you're going to be worried about how it affects your plan, and you're not going to be able to engage in the process that you're in. But if you have no plan, then nothing can mess you up because you have no plan. You're just responding to what's happening in the moment. I feel like drawing relates a lot to that because as I'm working, sometimes let's say, what happened recently? Something happened. Oh, something happened recently. This is kind of a basic one, but I was drawing this girl's dress out and I put this pattern into her dress that was kind of like a board, like a checkerboard. And I was like, oh, it'd be cool if I put these like little shapes into the squares, and then the little shapes could become like chess pieces because her dress kind of looks like a chessboard, And that's not an idea that I would have had just like sitting here. If I sat down, I wouldn't eventually say, oh, of course, I'll draw a girl where her checkerboard dress becomes a chessboard. But while I'm working, things like that naturally come up and happen, and you can kind of like pluck these ideas out of, what's happening in front of you. So it's kind of a convoluted way of saying that we're just going to do it live and see what happens. I should have the Bill O'Reilly clip ready where he says we do it live. You guys know what I'm talking about? It's some like old internet shit. Anyway, so first things first. I normally would do this with a pencil. Actually, this is kind of interesting. I'll bust it out real quick. So here I got this pencil. I'm going to grab this piece of paper. So normally I would do the preliminary stuff with a pencil. Here's the thing. Oh, it's not going to work. Wow, I just played myself live on the stream. Let's see if I can find the other mechanical pencil. I will get it going, but if I can't, we're just going to move on. We are moving on. Doesn't really matter. What I was going to show you is that in these mechanical pencils, oh, perfect. I have it right here. The lead inside, normally it's blue. This is actually something called a non-photo blue pencil. If you've seen like architectural drawings, you've seen them like probably all in blue. That's kind of like a stereotypical like architecture drawing thing. Part of the reason why they do that is that when you scan things or even take photos of work, blue tends to, there's like a spectrum of blue to red. Blue tends to skew towards white, and red tends to skew towards black. So if I had a lot of like really pale blue lines on this page and I scanned it and put it in black and white, the blue lines would go up towards white and some of them would just straight up disappear. Whereas if I had some red lines on here and scanned it, put it in black and white, the red lines would get way darker. There's a complex reason for that maybe I'll explain later when we talk about more drawing stuff. The point is though, these blue pencils, they're called non-photo blue pencils because they're non-photo. When you take a photo of them, they go away. I did this really, really, really dark, but if it was light, you wouldn't be able to see it because a camera is like a form of photography. You probably get the picture I'm painting here. So if I do stuff in pencil, you honestly can't really see it. So for that reason, we're going in pen style. We're going in with ink. Just saying that normally I would do this in pencil, but whatever. And I have this really small ruler here. I mentioned this on one of the earlier streams talking about tools and stuff, but you want to have like a variety of mark making assisting tools that assist with the mark making process. I mentioned this before on one of the earlier streams, but when I first saw this tiny ruler, I was like, oh my god, who would want a tiny ruler like that? And then I was like, wait, I need that. That's what I need actually, because it's perfect for small things like this, where as you can see, big giant ruler, we'll need this later, but it's not as easy to fit on like a smaller page. Also, as you're working, the thing is, let's say you want to drop a border in, okay? So you could do it like, oh, okay, I have all these, numbers on my ruler. 99% of you guys have probably seen a ruler before, and you can measure it out and say, okay, it's 1 centimeter, and get it going. But also you can just utilize the thickness of the ruler to do it way quicker and way easier. I don't really like to work with numbers when I'm drawing, even if I'm using the compass and ruler and stuff. We'll talk about that in a minute. I like to just use the natural properties of my tools. So you can see that what I'm doing here is I'm going to line up the ruler with just the edge of the page, and I'm going to use that to just bump up. Here we go. Boom. To just bump up the bottom of the page. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to zoom out just a tiny bit. There we go. Cool. I'm going to do it on this side too. Actually, I'm going to do it on this side. And the reason why I'm doing this is that if you looked at my still life drawing comic, which is on my website under comics, under instructional, show the website, drawing into a border is completely and totally different from just drawing into the empty space of the page. That's actually the main tip that I give artists when they're first 100% starting out. Actually, if you've DM'd me, if you've sent me drawings or something and you're like, oh, and like, what do you think? Like, what should I do to get better? This is probably the first thing that I told you. It's the first thing I tell everyone. You want to lay down a border and work into the border. So that's what I'm doing right now. Basically, if you just leave the whole page white, then it's kind of like you're putting your picture into like a giant void. You're just putting it into this infinite white space. Boom. Here we go. So this is basically how I start all my drawings, a little border. So you can see what I mean by that. Let's say you sit down and you're like, oh, I'm going to draw an apple. And if you're just drawing the apple, let's say you're like, oh, cool, I'm going to draw an apple. I'm going to be such a good artist one day. Oh my God, it's going to be so good. You're just drawing this apple. You're not composing. This is really good, right? I know. It's like Rembrandt style with the sketchy lines. You could do that on purpose, get a little hatching in there. So you're not composing a picture right now. You're just drawing an apple, right? You're just putting it, like you can see, into this big empty void. Whereas if you have a border set up, by the way, I'm going to get good at having my hand not block what I'm doing. That was something I didn't anticipate because the camera's above, so you just got to stick with me. Stick with me on all the technical problems. Whereas if you have a rectangle like this and you're like, oh, I'm going to draw an apple, if you're working into this frame, now you're composing a picture. Now you're thinking about the picture, right? And how what you're doing sits inside this frame. Now maybe you got a little horizon in here. Maybe you got a little, I don't know, a shadow going on, maybe there's like a penny on the floor. And now you have a picture that you're composing rather than just dropping it into this big field. So kind of a long way of explaining why I think it's really important to put a border down. Actually, when I see people working without a border sometimes, it gives me this like feeling. I'm like, oh my God, there's no border. There's no border. You're just working into the infinite white space. Okay. The next thing that I do, I'm about to do this in pen. Yeah, I'll do it in pen. Why not? I'm grabbing a smaller pen. So the next thing that I'm doing is, speaking of, composing stuff, that white space, all that stuff I just mentioned, is I like to get a little geometry going on the page, just basically to kind of section it out and partition it out and, getting it going, basically. I'm looking at the chat really quick. It looks good. It looks so cool. It looks good. I think it's going well. I'm just going to keep going. Yeah, boom. Okay. So no one's saying like, oh my God, it's not working. So that's pretty much good enough for me right now. So I like to kind of partition out the space and get a little geometry going, just so, again, it's not this infinite field. Normally I would do this in pencil, so it wouldn't actually become a part of the final picture. It's just useful for me when I'm like composing the picture and getting things going. So normally, I'm repeating myself a little bit, but normally this would be in pencil. We're going to do it in pen right now. So first thing I'm going to do is find the center of the page. So obviously you can see one corner to one corner, and from the other corner, cool. So I could put the whole X in, but we don't really need that, right? All we need to know is where that line hits this line, because when you have a rectangle, the intersection of the two, dude, I really have to bust out like the geometry terms right now. The intersection of the two, what the hell do you call a line like this? The bisector, whatever it is, that finds the middle. So instead of doing the whole line, I'm just going to put this right here. Boom. And now we have the center of the page. The thing is that when you're looking at an image like this, the way your eye works, the center of a page actually tends to look a little bit lower. You actually want to push this up just a little bit. That's actually why, if you see portraits of people, whenever you see a portrait of someone, it's not like their head's in like the center of the page and then their body like comes down here, because then it looks like they're really low. You're kind of like, what's going on here? When you see a portrait of someone, their head is normally a little bit up above center, just, for a variety of reasons. That's how your eye works. So we actually want to take this center and push it up just a little bit. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use, boom, my compass. Yeah, people are asking about the gloves. Yeah, it's because the paint is toxic as something. Try not to curse on stream just in case, got to get the kids into the art, people having wholesome time with their families. Back in the day, like 2 years ago, when I did a few live streams, I wasn't even talking, I was just like drawing. People were like, yeah, I watched it with my kids, and I was like, wow, so wholesome. I'm being a wholesome part of someone's life. Okay, so I have to explain something about how I use the compass. So I'm putting the watercolor paper aside for a second. We are going to do, my wife has such fucking long hair. It's insane. Get this shit out of here. Okay, so, boom. So there's a property of geometry that I use all the time when I'm composing my images. It's actually the main thing that I use when I'm putting any geometry or anything geometric into my artwork. And I'm going to show you guys right now. By the way, so this is a compass. Most of you have probably seen a compass before. In elementary school, they gave us like really crappy ones. This one has a special attachment. Let's get this out of here. Boom. So it has this special piece. So you can put in any drawing tool you want into here. Obviously, it fits in there. Just showing you guys the tool. So if you go buy a compass, you know what to look for. It actually won't have this on there when you go to buy it. This will be tucked off to the side in a case. Actually, do I have the case? Yes, I do. So if any of you guys go to buy a compass, it'll be in a case like this. Oh, there's like pencil shavings in here. I'm not embarrassed about it, whatever. And in the bottom, you'll see it'll be attached like in there. So just letting you know, it won't be like on there. And I really definitely encourage people to pick one up because even if you're not doing anything artistic, just having one and using one accesses this totally different part of your brain, and it's a totally other way of just thinking. It's almost like visual thinking completely married with like informational thinking that I think would appeal to a lot of people. I'm not going to say the A word, but we all have weird brains. We all hang out on the internet too much, so I think a lot of you guys would be into it. All right, so what I'm going to do right now, mark off this little dot. That's the center point. And I'm going to throw this in here. Okay. So I'm going to make a circle. Most of you have probably seen a circle before. Perfect. A perfect circle. Take that, Play-Doh. They exist. Okay, so there's this natural property of circles that I use when making images. Let's just say hypothetically, just to make it convenient, let's say we perfectly measured this whole thing out and everything, and we knew that the bottom of the circle was right here. Oh, dude, the pen. There we go. Perfect. So let's say the bottom of the circle is right there. What you can do is, it's a natural property of circles. Maybe I should have made this a little bit smaller. Yeah, let's do it. I'm going to turn the page over real quick. Okay, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. It's worth it. The payoff will be worth it. Dun, 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 dun. All right, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller, so I'm just going to be sure it's going to fit on the page. Perfect. Smaller circle. Get the bottom. Going on. Okay, let's just mark off. It's actually better that I did that because now the middle is nice and small, and you'll see why that matters in a second. Okay, so it is a natural property of circles that if you take a circle, so just to make sure everyone's on the same page, when you're looking at this compass, when you're looking at me draw with the compass, this arm has a little point, right? You just saw me draw the circle. So where this metal arm is, that's going to be the center of the circle. Obviously, where the marker is, that's the outside of the circle. So if you take a circle and you make a new circle with the same size, same radius, and you put its sorry, I'm trying to make sure I speak very specifically. If you put its center on the outside of the first circle, you can see, obviously, the line of that circle hits the original middle point. This will all make sense in a second. Some people are probably like, dude, what? But you'll see where I'm going with this in a second. So, that second circle, if its midpoint is on the outside of the original circle, its outside hits the center of the original circle. Great. Is that confusing enough? Probably not. But what you can do is you see this point where our, let's say circle B intersects with circle A. Circle A is the first circle. You can make another circle. And we're going to put the center at that point where they intersect. So we have the intersection of circle A and circle B, and we are going to make circle C. There we go. Where circle C intersects with circle A, we have this new point. We're going to put the center of our next circle right there. Boom, let's do it again. And I mentioned before, it probably sounded kind of weird for me to say that I don't like using numbers when I'm doing art. This is the kind of thing that I do like doing. You can see that I already have this kind of like geometric pattern going, but I haven't had to input any information. I'm just using the information that the tool is giving me. That might sound kind of weird, but it's a totally different ballgame if you're taking your tools and you're like, oh, this is 1 inch, this is 2 inches, how can I get to 30 degrees? I don't like to kind of enter that world because it just doesn't really fit my vibe. This is what I like doing, where you're using the information that the visuals are naturally giving back to you to generate more information. It's like the picture is generating information itself. Doesn't make sense. You'll see where I'm going with this in a second. So fourth circle intersecting with the first circle, we're going to do the same thing again. We are going to put the center of our new circle. Boom. On the outside. Same deal. We're going to put the center of our new circle where that new circle intersected with the first one. And if you're paying attention, you probably know where I'm going with this. Guess where the last circle goes? Oh yeah, it goes right there at the intersection of the new circle and the first circle. Boom. So, nice, there we go. So it's a natural property of two-dimensional space that a circle will fit perfectly 6 circles, copies of itself, circles that are the same size, around its perimeter. Why does that matter? Why is that important? Why is that interesting? Because this is how we can sort of access the geometry of the two-dimensional plane without doing any measuring or anything like that. I'm going to use, I was going to grab a different pen, but actually, yeah, I have a red one right here. I'm going to grab this red pen. Really, I should have done what I just did in red and then do what I'm about to do in black, but whatever, you tuned into the live stream. So what this means is that with this pattern that we have right here, I can very easily take the connections of these points. And like I said, normally this would be in pencil. So this is a very cool tool to use when you are making images because people don't see the geometry underneath. Like in all the images I've made, I've almost never left this underlying structure visible. So just making sure it's perfect. I also want to make sure you guys can see what I'm doing. So you, as the person making the visuals, have access to this underlying pattern that other people aren't going to see. And then when you pull things out of it, it's kind of like people's eye can sense that there's this underlying structure, but, it's kind of like magic. They don't really know, it's more like intuitive. Like when you look at, what's a good example of this in nature? A honeycomb. That's perfect, actually. Honeycombs have this shape and structure underneath. That is a pretty obvious structure. But lots of things in nature have this underlying pattern. Not even just this pattern, just an underlying pattern that you can kind of intuitively sense. So as an artist, it's a way you can kind of tap into that. Boom. So you can see I got this hexagon going here. If I wanted to, I could also just keep pulling more and more and more information out of this. So for example, this will get a little confusing, but we're kind of just going to roll with it, and then we'll go back to the actual image that I'm making. So you can see, so here we have the hexagon, right? Our hexagon's in red. Now, let's say I wanted to make a 12-sided shape. Let's say we wanted to step it up a little bit. Well, that means that I would need to find the middle point that is around here, right? Where's the middle point? Where's the middle point over here? No one knows. But what I can do is I can say, okay, well, I really have kind of a triangle coming around here. So if I connect this point to our center, yeah, I'll do it with the ruler. I'm not gonna make a wiggly line on this right now. So if I take that point, it'll give me the midpoint between, look, I was off. I was not even close before. Right here, and then I'm not going to do it right now, but I could go through and find the midpoints and connect them and make a 12-sided shape, And then we could keep going, and we could get like pretty crazy pulling a lot of information out of here. I probably will do a whole stream just on different geometrical patterns. This is just like the six-fold one, and it's the most intuitive, but you can do this with, you know, any number of sides, things like that. It's actually pretty cool if you dig into the history of this kind of thing, because certain people, like this is obvious, the one that I just showed you. If you played around with a compass enough, you would eventually figure it out. You would eventually do this naturally. But there's certain times where, you know, someone like Pythagoras, for example, will figure out how to make let's say a five-sided shape without measuring, or someone later in time like Kepler, way later. Like Kepler got really obsessed with tessellating pentagons and tessellating five-sided shapes, and you can't actually tessellate them perfectly, but you know, people dig in and really bite into the whole visual geometry thing, and it's a really cool world. It's a really cool world. We'll probably do a whole show on that, but not right now. So now that you understand that, I'm going to quickly deploy that information. Let's see. I'll use the black one. Actually, I don't know if you guys will be able to see yellow. Let's take red. Let's take red. Let's see if you guys can see this color. Dun-dun-dun. I have these like neon pens I use sometimes. Boom. Here we go. Yeah, I see people talking about flower of life. Yeah, that pattern has, if anyone knows about sacred geometry, that pattern's like the sacred geometry pattern. I could go into that. It's kind of a whole can of worms, because sacred geometry is at once really, really, really awesome, but then also the biggest grab bag of like hardcore new age like nonsense sometimes. The two really go together. So if I was going to go into it, I'd really have to like go pretty hard and like parse it out. I actually so that pattern I just showed you, this one, if you're on your phone or something, or, you know, with your computer and your phone, you can Google up flower of life and you'll see this pattern taken out huge. Like you could just keep building circles all around and around. I'm sure you can imagine. I honestly want to grab a book called Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life off my shelf, but yeah, I'll do it. Why not? Hold on a second. Where is it? I know I have it here. Oh, boom. All right, so this is hardcore. If you're a weirdo, you've seen this book before. If you're not, then I need you to step your weirdo game up. It's called Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life by Drunvalo Melchizedek. This guy's kind of crazy, and not really in the cool way, honestly. This is like weird new age stuff that like I do not endorse. I kind of disavow, actually, but I just got it so you could see this pattern. So you can imagine you can take these circles further and further and further out, and yeah, it's using a lot of like, whoa, man, like, did you know that consciousness is really just like shapes of life experiencing like their own intersection with other like nexuses of consciousness, man? And you're like, yo, what? I actually, and I got volume 2. I used to be that guy. I mean, you guys know. You guys are watching the stream. I used to be that guy. So I don't want to go into that too much right now. Since I did mention it, and you're about to watch me draw more circles, when I was really into that the most, so I used to be really into that exact kind of weirdness. Let's see, can you guys see this? No, you can't see that. Can you? You can kind of see it. I think this will be fine for what we're doing for right now. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, focus. Not telling a story about girl with flower of life tattoo. So what I need to do right now, bring it back into this world, is I want to figure out how to get this a little bit up, how I can bring this up a little bit more. So what I'm going to do, soon we'll stop doing like hardcore geometry. This is really like the only part where this is like important, but I will tell you guys a cool story while we're doing this. So what I'm going to do is I actually am going to draw in that X that I initially said I wasn't going to draw in. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to... So now we have this point right here and this point right here, and they're equidistant from the center, right? This is the only time we'll go really hard on geometry. So, you know, in later streams, if I do something like this, I'll just lay it out beforehand, but I thought it'd be cool for you guys to see it happen from scratch. I'm going to put back in the pen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use those 2 points that I know are equidistant from the center to find the vertical. I'm trying to draw the vertical line straight up. If you think about it, without using like a triangle or something, I can't really do that, and I don't really want to use a triangle. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take an arbitrary width, and I'm going to swing this up like that. I'm going to take the same width and take it down like that. Boom. So now I know that this point is the vertical from here. If you didn't follow that, it's okay. Honestly, I kind of just want to keep it moving. So we'll do a whole episode on that kind of thing later. And now I'm going to draw the center line. So you can see that what I'm doing, it's actually interesting because in one of Benoit Mandelbrot's books, he's this guy who like basically discovered fractals. He has a picture of Jesus. He didn't draw it. It's from like some ancient picture. And Jesus actually has a compass in this, it's probably from like the 1200s around. Maybe it's a little bit later. Maybe it's 1400s. And Jesus is depicted with this compass, and he's measuring on this like circle earth. And Benoit Mandelbrot uses that to talk about mathematics and God like creating the universe. It's in a book called The Fractal Geometry of Nature. And that's always what I think about when I'm doing this, because what I'm doing is I'm kind of setting out into this like void, and I'm carving it up, and I'm making it able to receive a picture by measuring it out and making all that shit happen. Okay, so now I'm going to put the circle in, and I'll tell the story I was going to tell a second ago while I'm doing this. So let's see. I'm just going to take this point right here. So I'm just putting it up a little bit. Like I said, we just wanted to punch it up a little bit from the center. And let's see, I want to make sure it fits. Here we go, perfect. And I'm going to, boom. Oh, yes, perfect. So now we got the circle going on. And I'm going to just get a hexagon going and then see what I want to do from there. So you're going to see me just quickly I'm going to do a super quick version of what I just did, where I'm just taking the compass and I'm just walking it along the outside to get those 6 points. And then I'm going to, so I don't need that one, find the points between them, and we'll make these 2 overlapping hexagons, and that's going to be the jump off for the picture making process. So now I'm going to connect these points. Okay, and I'm not going to narrate finding the other points. You can just watch me do it, and it'll be cool. So the story I was going to tell, I mentioned the flower of life and stuff. So when I was the most into that, living in this apartment, frankly, doing a lot of psychedelics. Usually if people are into that kind of stuff, they are doing psychedelics and drugs and stuff. It's actually funny. I was thinking the other day, I feel like I can talk to people about philosophy or theology, and within like 15 minutes, I could be 100% sure if they smoke weed a lot or not, because it just makes you gravitate towards these like certain ideas. It's almost like your vector of like ideas becomes what's crazy rather than like what's true. Maybe that's a really obvious observation, but anyway, that was the situation. And I was at this museum, and I look up, and I was literally just reading one of those books like a few hours ago, and I was really into it. And I look up, and there's this girl, and she has a tank top on, and her entire back is covered in a flower of life tattoo. So her whole back is tatted out like the cover of that book I just showed you. So I was like, wow, this is completely insane. And like these books were not that popular then, so I was really surprised. And I texted my friend, who was not into this kind of thing but knew that I was, and I was like, dude, there's this girl here, and she has this thing. Like, what should I? And he was like, dude, you have to talk to her. That's like the most epic in of all time. What you're going to see me do right now is find the midway point, and then I'm going to put another hexagon that overlaps this, and then we're done with the geometry thing. But I'm going to keep going with my story. So I went up to this girl, and I was like, hey, I don't want to be weird, but I noticed that you have this flower of life tattoo. Like, are you into like Drunvalo Melchizedek and stuff? And she was like, oh my God, yeah, like I love Drunvalo Melchizedek, and like those books like are so cool. And we talked for like a while, and she was really crazy, obviously, because she had the back tattoo of that. And she was with a bunch of guys, and I was kind of like, damn, am I really like overstepping my bounds right now if I like ask this girl out? Like, she's with these guys, but like I feel like they're not really like with her. Like, I really can't tell. So I put that vibe out there, but I don't know. I didn't really go for it. But the really funny thing, and the whole reason I'm telling the story, is that when she left, so we were talking for a while, and then she was like, oh, my friends want to leave. Like, let's leave. Probably one of the guys was trying to hook up with her, and he was like, damn, this guy's laying out like some hardcore shit I don't know about, so we should get her out of here. When she went to leave, she bowed at me. We were like in public with like all these people in this museum, and she was like, "It's so great meeting like another like soul, another like bright soul." And she like bowed at me, and everyone looked at us, and I didn't know if I should bow. I was like, I'm not bowing to this woman in this fucking museum right now. And it was just a really weird time. Those are the weird people you meet when you float around in those circles. Anyway, so another little tip. I really want to encourage people to draw, so I'm going to just constantly be laying out like little tips and stuff. Is one of my art teachers said bad lines or like bad friends. You don't want bad lines around. They kind of mess up your drawing situation. And you can see that what I did was I measured out a triangle from these 2 points to get the midsection, but visually I actually can't even really tell how accurate it was. I can't even really tell if I got the midpoint because I have this cross line and it's kind of like messing up how I'm visually judging things. So we're just going to roll with it. So now what I've done, hopefully, is I'm going to make another hexagon to get a nice little 12-pointed shape. I think we're pretty good. That looks about halfway. And I just need to do that a few times and then lay out the hexagon and we'll be done with geometry world. We are almost there. And yeah, sometimes, if I'm doing a picture like this, I could just jump in and, draw into this like wide open space, but I like putting the visuals into a kind of like geometric frame. Maybe it's because I'm so into medieval art, even like Byzantine art. It all kind of is situated nicely within its picture plane. And yeah, I feel like just having any kind of measuring coming out, oh yeah, you can see it's about to look hot. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in and paint in these shapes. And if you're looking at this right now and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe Owen has taken all this time to just get these hexagons going. Once I paint in these shapes, you'll see the natural like radiance. Can I use the word radiance without sounding pretentious? The natural vibrance of the shape will really, really jump out. Oh, I got ink on my hands. Doesn't matter. That's also partially why I'm wearing gloves. Oh yeah, that's another reason why I'm wearing gloves. Your hands are covered with oils, and actually they'll bleed right onto the paper. If I'm painting like really hard and I'm really into like a super detailed drawing, just by laying down paint on the paper, I can feel if the oils of my hand have been there before or not. So even if I'm just drawing black and white, not using the paint, I always wear gloves. In fact, if you go into a museum or like some archives or something, oh, there we go. Look at that. That looks hot. That was totally worth it. So yeah, if you go into like some museum archives or something like that, you'll see like there'll be a really old page, and when you where someone has touched the page, it'll yellow in like 300-400 years. So you have a perfect manuscript, and then little like fingerprinty marks down at the bottom where someone touched the page, and that was a bad idea. Okay, so what I was mentioning before, I could keep drawing in, but I really don't want to do that because let's say I, draw something out and then you're just watching me like fill in the drawing that I made. Like, is that cool? Is that interesting? Yeah, I guess it could be, and I could keep telling you crazy stories from my life, but let's not do that. Let's get to the painting situation. I'm gonna check in the chat really quick. Is it going well? People can hear me talking about having a border. It looks good. We are just gonna keep going. All right, cool. And if you've been watching the last episodes, halfway through I did kind of like an intermission and like took questions. I think that what I'll do is maybe like when I'm painting in the outside and I'm filling in some shapes, I'll take questions or something like that. I don't really know. We'll see how it goes, but I feel like I have some momentum. I feel like I should keep going. How long have we been going already? Damn, it's already been 43 minutes. What? That is insane. Yeah, I feel like these are going to end up being like an hour and a half. I mean, there's just no way to cram it into an hour. When I used to do like some, can't say exactly what my job was. When I used to do things, teaching people about art things, let's put it that way. An hour is just no time at all, man. If you take like real art lessons somewhere, you'll be there for like 3 hours. That's like a normal amount of time. That's like a good amount of time to like really dig in and, get into something. You can see if we only had an hour, like I would just do this and then that's the whole thing. I'm also going to change my gloves really quick. Anyone want to ask me anything while I'm changing my gloves over here? Yeah, might have the tism because the anticipation of seeing the shape come together was a lot. I know, man. I know. Honestly, it sounds like a joke. Maybe you're joking. Maybe you're not. I get the feeling that you're not joking. But when you get way deeper into it, and like you can imagine like shapes coming off shapes, and when you have like two really far away points, and you're like, okay, I'm finally going to connect them, and you have like, the tip of a pentagon over here and the edge of a hexagon over here, and you're like, okay, if I did it perfectly, it should perfectly hit this point, and you draw the line and it perfectly hits the point. Oh my god. It's like literally the best feeling. It's just the best feeling. I mean, why do anything else with your life? Can you guys hear this glove? It's like surgery status over here. Like, this is insane. Always reminds me of that Blink-182 album cover where like the girl is putting on the glove. Okay. Anyway, let's do this. Okay. Choosing colors, the color situation. I don't really know how I want to take this right now. I have kind of an idea for what we'll do. What I was thinking was, I'll let you guys know what I'm thinking before we keep going. I just need a pen. Perfect. What I was thinking was sometimes, like on one of my shirts actually, I have this graphic where there's this like shape, and then it kind of opens to like a hood, and you can see this like woman's face below. In that graphic, it's kind of like the Virgin Mary. I wouldn't call it that because like, and I still feel kind of like disrespectful, like making like cute, playful images of like real like theological figures. You could say it's like an allusion to, a symbolic allusion to her in that graphic. You can see her hair kind of coming down, and you can see her neck a little bit. And then on that one, since I was thinking of Virgin Mary symbolism, I have these stars on the cloak. Virgin Mary always has this like super dark blue cloak, and I love it. It's one of my favorite symbols. I always think of it as like a cloak of like the night sky, and sometimes I put these like stars on it. So what I was thinking was, I was like, well, I don't want to paint like Virgin Mary on the stream necessarily, because then I feel like I have to make it like perfect, and like, then we're playing with some like really serious stuff, guys. But what I was thinking was I could take that that shape that I'm looking for a tube of paint over here. That kind of like lumpen hill shape, and yeah, I was thinking of it like a hill shape. And I was like, why don't I put a girl in like a green cloak? And then I could use that green cloak as kind of like a hill shape, like I just said. So let's try that. Let's see where it goes. That's about as much as I'm thinking right now. I'm going to start out with this color sap green. Honestly, I was feeling really hard. Where did I just put it? Orange. And I was thinking of using orange, but the thing is, yesterday I did kind of like an experiment where I was just painting a bunch, and I feel like orange is just so fall. I don't know. Maybe I'm dumb for thinking that, but I feel like when you get orange with the yellow and red going, it's just like such a fall energy, and we're literally at the farthest point from fall in the year that could possibly happen. So, I don't know. I thought we'd change it up, and we're going to go green style. If you watch the the paint episode, then you know about this, but there's really two like main greens I could deploy here. This one is sap green. This is my yellow green. Let's see. Should I move this light? Maybe I should. Oh, yeah. Look at that. Look at that light moving situation. So, this is sap green. It's kind of like a yellow green. And then I also have Viridian over here, which is like a darker green. This is like the cool green. It's like warm green, cool green. Now, if you were a good viewer and you watched the second episode, then you know the problem that I have right now, which is that I want to, honestly, look at this dark green. Make sure I have my paper towel ready. Cool. It is a really nice color. It looks really dark on the stream. It actually kind of is this dark, but the problem with this green is that it's transparent. It's so see-through. You can actually see how see-through it is. So I actually can't just take this green and put it on the page because it would be see-through. Conversely, I can't just take white, which is the normal color I would use to beef it up, because the white is going to make it really, 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 really chalky. So if I want to use this Viridian, which looking at it now I do, what I'm thinking is that I'll put the hill shape in this like Viridian color, and then I'll put the hills behind it in the sap green, and it'll release into like the sky. That'll look really cool. Let's bring this camera down just a little bit. Perfect. So I kind of have to decide how I want to make this green usable. And what I'm thinking is that I'm just going to take the sap green and mix them together. Let's just do it. So I just want to punch it up a little bit. Yeah, that looks nice. How's it look on the stream? Yeah, it looks good actually. That's actually pretty accurate. I had to get a really good camera because I was worried that, I could go to all the trouble of setting this up, and then if the colors don't look right, it's like, why did I even bother doing all this? I'm actually going to see what happens. What happens if I bring the light down even lower? I have this crazy setup. Hold up one sec. You are seeing the camera pass. The light pass underneath. Is this better? No, I'm going to put it back. There we go. That is what we're looking for. Perfect. Perfect. All right, cool. Tilt it so it's straight again. Boom. All right, cool. So yeah, this is a pretty good color. The other, I don't know, I'm actually gonna make it lighter than this even. I might even add a little white. I don't know, I might regret that, but I don't think so. Oh, this is wrong too. The other thing that's really interesting about painting in this way is that just to make it more difficult, the binder in the paint is not completely transparent. So there's this glue in here. There's a glue holding the paint together, and it's white. It's basically like slightly white, the binder in here. It's kind of like Elmer's glue. You guys have probably used Elmer's glue. So when it's, I want to make sure I say this right. When it's wet, it's slightly white, but then when it dries, it's clear. That's exactly how the binder in the paint is. So right now, there's this binder in here that is whitening this up a little bit. So what that means is that, and then it dries, it becomes more like chalky. It doesn't become like totally transparent, but it just dries in a different way. So what that means is that when you're painting, lighter colors are going to dry darker, and darker colors are going to dry slightly lighter. So you have to be keeping that in mind while you're painting. But let's just go for it. Should I add white to this? I don't know. Maybe I'll regret it, but I'm not going to do it. If we need to adjust, we can. I have this little jar. You can probably hear the paint hitting the side of the jar. And let's just get this going. I want to make sure everyone can see everything. Looks pretty good. Ooh, I could bring this light down. No, that looks like that was a mistake. Is it a mistake? I don't know. I can't really tell. It's like more intensely lit. Damn, this is like horror movie lighting right now. Should be painting like some vampire shit. I think we're gonna go back to how it was. I don't know actually. What do you guys think? I can't. This is kind of intense. I kind of like it though. It looks pretty good for me. Let's try it like this. Hold on, I gotta prop this lamp up real quick. I told you guys we were full on like public access TV status for the first like 5 episodes, so you're getting the real. That looks pretty good. I think it looks better than before actually. Yeah, you can really see the color now. All right, cool. We're gonna roll with this for a minute. Okay. Cool. And I'm getting all the color off my brush because I used orange last time. Slightly advanced a little bit, but orange and green are opposites on the color wheel. So they're not true opposites, but they're oppositional on the color wheel. So you mix orange and green, they kind of like cancel each other out. So I'm just making sure my brush is clean. All right, cool. I'm going to grab some of this paint and let's just go for it. You may notice I'm using a super tiny brush. That's because I want to make sure I am totally controlling how the paint goes down over every inch of the canvas. I'm also moving this paper towel, just narrating what I'm doing if it's off screen. Cool. So, yeah, everyone likes the new lighting. Great. Perfect. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of lay down this hill shape, and I'll start down here and get it going. Should be more hilly than that. And as I'm laying the colors down, so this is something else that makes painting fundamentally different than drawing. In drawing, what's communicating... All right, cool. I'm kind of holding my hand in like a weird position so you guys can see. So it's going to take me a second to get used to it, but it's cool. All right. So in drawing, what's communicating information to the viewer is lines. Drawing is a line-based medium. So when someone looks at a drawing, the way they know, you can think of it this way. When someone looks at a drawing, the way they know they're looking at what they're looking at, hello, ontology department, the way they are confident that they're looking at an apple or a dog or a woman or something like that is because of the lines. The lines are telling the viewer what they're looking at. In painting, it is not like that. The color is what is communicating to the viewer. Let's see. So you can kind of see right now, this side's a little bit lower than this side. It's not a huge deal because we're just kind of winging it, but I basically have to make the call if I want to like bump this up or later if I want to taper this down. I'm kind of just going to roll with it. Let's just roll with it. That's fine. So when I'm doing these lines, you can see the top part, I'm getting that nice and, let's see, maybe I'll bring it down a little bit. We're experimenting. This is the experimental one. Cool. Nice. That actually looks great. Okay. So you can see the top part of the shape up here is nice and crisp. Down at the bottom, it's kind of like messed up. That's because I don't care about the bottom, because what I'm doing is I'm laying in a shape. So it doesn't really matter to me how the bottom looks because it's almost like I'm cutting out these like shapes from paper. You can kind of imagine it that way. I'm also going to come through and let's put the bottom a little bit lower. Let's put it like down here. Yeah, there we go. This is going to be dope. Perfect. So here's the thing. If I'm painting by myself, I always use this tiny brush. Actually, I've done massive paintings with just this tiny brush. I mean, massive for, you know, the relative size of the brush. Maybe I should bust out a bigger one for what we're doing, but it actually doesn't make it that much faster. You would think it would be so much faster, but it's really not. It also just makes it way less accurate. So I'm also going to paint in the hood shape of the woman that I just described. So we're just going to kind of go in and get this hood shape. What I really hate that it's going to look like for a second is the hood shape is the shape of like a gray alien head. Ugh, the worst. We'll fix that later. It won't look like that later, but for now, it will look like that. All right, cool. Let's just paint in this hood. So yeah, the reason I use the small brush is because I can control exactly how thick the paint is going down over every square inch. So at the end, I don't want it to look like a watercolor painting where, you know, it's like washy and you can see like where the paint's thick and where the paint's thin. I want it to be just one like uniform layer, almost like someone just like silk screened out the paint. The way I'm thinking of engaging with the picture plane when I'm doing pictures like this is really like Tibetan and like medieval art. When you look at medieval art, you don't see like the canvas like shine. Well, they wouldn't use canvas, but we're not going to go into that right now. You don't really see like the wood like shining through the paint. All the paint is laid on uniform thickness, and you're not really like seeing it in that way. It also doesn't take that long. Like, you know, when you sit down, you're like, oh my God, I have to fill in this whole shape. But, you know, I've only been talking for like 30 seconds and I'm almost done actually. So, great. One other thing that's kind of interesting that I noticed when I transitioned from analog painting, that's what I call like real painting. It's kind of lame that we're so far into the future. I have to call painting by a special name to oppose it to digital painting, which is not really painting at all. But when I switched from analog to digital, with the greens, I noticed that the yellow greens in real life are so strong. They're so strong and nice. But digitally, yellow greens, they just suck. They suck. And I really don't know why that is. I'm also looking at the camera. So what's interesting is that this paint dries really fast. So right now on the screen, I'm not looking at the chat because I'm trying to like just keep it going, but I will look at the chat in a second. I have the light really low. So if you see my finger, just right back, like a few inches is the light. And it's making it really shiny. So you might be looking at this and you're like, wow, dude, that paint is not really going on so well. But when it dries, it will cease being reflective and it'll look nice. I mentioned this before, but the paint in like an earlier episode. But the paint I'm using is called gouache, and it dries with like a nice chalky finish, and that's why I use it. It's the most similar to mineral pigments and stuff like that. I'm actually going to move my water over here because you'll also see me dipping the brush in the water. And that's because one of the other parts of painting like this is I have to make sure that the balance between water and pigment and binder is perfect the whole time. So even within this little like pile of paint, I have this little nook where the consistency is perfect. Up in here, it's like there's not enough moisture and it's kind of like this thick paint. But right here is like the sweet spot. So it's actually a little bit more complicated than it looks. I mentioned this in an earlier episode, but I'm probably going to say that like 1,000 times. But I'm going to talk about Tibetan painting in a second. All right, cool. So we laid that down. And I'm also going to throw down a layer under... Am I going to do that? Yeah, I am. I'm going to throw down a layer underneath. Let's throw down some like dirt down below. Oh, this is going to be hot. Okay. So I was just wondering what brown I was going to use. And I was like, I have a few options there. But I think I'm going to use this Venetian red. I really never get to use this color. And it's such a hot color. Look at that. It kind of implies like a red clay earth rather than the other color I was thinking of, which is more of like a chocolatey brown. I'm not too worried about it looking too Christmassy because I'm going to make the sky like a really bright color like yellow or something like that. But let's just dig into the Venetian red. This color always reminds me of, I went to Pompeii one time and the walls are like 200% this color. They're like this Pompeii red. It's so awesome. Although I guess the Venetians called it because it's called Venetian red. They didn't call it Pompeii red. So let's just put like a little layer of it down below the hill. Get it down over here. It's funny because I can't avoid, the parallel. I feel like the painting show format was like 100% owned by Bob Ross, and his thing is like, put in a happy little tree, right? And I feel like eventually, if I do this for long enough, I'll be like, let's just put a little skull down over here. The skull of the first man, Adam, underneath this hill who died. And the skull represents death, just a little sad little skull to be rejuvenated by the blood of Jesus later. Just kidding. Well, I'm not kidding because that is really what happened. But anyway, let's take some questions. I'm gonna look up to the chat in a second. Ask me some questions while I'm putting in this dirt. I probably will put some kind of like thing under the ground over here, maybe like a bone or like a skull or something like that. Normally when I'm putting these pictures together, sometimes that's something I should mention. I'll mention this and then I'll see about taking questions in the chat. Sometimes I do have like a hardcore idea. Like I'm like, okay, sometimes it's a direct concept. Like, okay, this is going to be a picture of St. Herman of Alaska. Boom, that's what this picture is of. Sometimes it represents more like a concept. That could be like a visual concept. Like let's say like the Arma Christi, like the tools of, Jesus's passion, or it could be more kind of zoomed out. Like I might make a picture and be like, oh, this is about how like man suffers in general. Sometimes it's just a vibe. More often than not, I'm thinking of like a simple concept and extrapolating that out into a picture. So I've done pictures where I'm like, oh, let's say it's like a, cool spring night. And I'll just kind of bring like all the symbolism that I think of for that into a picture. And it's not that someone would look at it and be like, oh, wow, it's so nice that this person painted all the imagery related to a cool spring night. It's more just like, sometimes you read a poem and it's just like an abstract, like mash of symbols all thrown at you. And sometimes I like that. Sometimes I like the ability in painting to just put symbols together. Like, let's say I put a firefly on the back of a turtle with like a lock, and then there's like a tree and there's a key in the tree. Like, does it really mean something? Like, I don't know, maybe, but also it's just a way of like thinking visually with symbols. But then sometimes I do explicitly use symbols in like a very hyper-specific way. So, oh shit, I dropped the paint cap. So it does run that spectrum. And I'd say it runs a spectrum of like visual thinking to visual narration. That's how I'll put it. It runs a spectrum from like just purely having ideas by creating visual information versus communicating information via pictures and symbols instead of words. Sounds like it doesn't mean anything, but actually it does. And if you followed my advice and read Iconostasis, Pavel Florensky talks about that in the beginning of the book, but you didn't read it. You heard me talk about it, but you didn't go to Amazon. You didn't order Iconostasis. You think I'm not talking to you, but I am. I'm specifically talking to you right now. Okay, I'll take a question while I do this. Do I use the fill tool while doing visual art? Nah, I kind of paint it all in. It's not that it's too vulgar. Stream of consciousness, schizo painter vibes. Yeah, I mean, why else are we here? I want to make it focus. I'm seeing the camera's like doing this weird twitchy focusy thing. Why is it doing that? Maybe it'll start once I stop once I start painting again. You can see it's like it almost knows where to focus. I think we're good. Let's see. Yeah, perfect. Okay, perfect. Owen Cyclops. You know Jonathan Pague? Feel like you'd really be into his stuff, free symbolism. Yeah, I've seen that guy around Twitter and stuff. Someone sent me his visual situation, his YouTube thing, because he has a talk called like the symbolic nature of flat Earth. By the way, in case you're keeping score at home, this color is called burnt umber. It's really fresh and dark. He has a video called like the symbolic nature of flat Earth. And this guy, I actually met up with him. He was like, yeah, he doesn't think Earth is flat. It's just about like the symbolism of flat Earth. And I was like, interesting. I'm down. I didn't actually watch it though. I was kind of like, well, if he thought Earth was flat, I'd probably watch it, but I don't know. I'll probably watch it eventually. His carvings are insane though. If you guys don't know who I'm talking about, he's in the chat. I don't want to mispronounce his name again. It's like Jonathan Pague or something. He has a lot of like talks about symbolism and Orthodox art, but no, I haven't really checked out his vibe yet. Why'd you call yourself Owen Cyclops? Is there a mythical connection there or what? Interesting. The questions are always unexpected but interesting. Partially, I just had to pick a name eventually. I know that's kind of a lame answer, but I thought about it for so long because obviously I'm so into symbolism that it was almost like painful at a certain point that I was like, oh my god, like it feels like such a big decision. I picked the Cyclops because I thought the Cyclops was a good symbol for a variety of reasons. It kind of fits nicely like the one eye thing with a lot of different symbolic worlds, I guess you could say. I'm just twisting this so I can get the nice little situation over here. Even like the Bible, like there's no Cyclopses in the Bible, but it does say like, what's the quote I'm thinking of? Oh yeah, like if you were going to sin with your eye, it'd be better to pluck out one eye and lose it than like sin and lose your soul. Who the Cyclops were, they were kind of like, in some versions of Greek mythology, they're kind of like these craftsmen like type characters. There's a lot of reasons, but I just felt like it was perfect because, vision, having like limited vision. If you looked at any like Jungian stuff, there's also an archetype of someone who, in like stories, a figure who like loses one eye and then they only have one eye left, but they gain spiritual sight because of that. That's a really strong archetype in like world mythology. I really identify with that just because, for a variety of reasons. If you want to hear about my life story, we can talk about that. Basically, it's the symbolic connotations. There's not really one answer. Let's take one more question. I'm mispronouncing iconostasis. Damn. I know. Someone told me that, and I was like, ugh, I really don't want that to be true. Is it iconostasis? It's iconostasis. I'm going to have to change it. That sucks. I want one more good question, though, before I keep looking away. This is the intermission. If you have to use the restroom, do it right now. Some art books you recommend. That's good. I'll take these two questions. Art books I recommend and how do I find a good wife? That's awesome. Okay, I'll take those questions as I'm doing this. Okay, so I'm going to do something else right now. Let's see. I can't tell how I want to put in the sky yet. So I'm going to fill in the outside border here right now. I'm going to try and keep this moving to see if we can get to like the drawing stage. Like I said, we're still testing out the broadcasting situation. So like you can imagine being me. If I normally spend like 6 hours on a painting, I have no idea how that would translate over to quickly doing one on stream. So thank you for being here for the testing initial situation. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm taking this orange paint. I couldn't fight it. I mentioned at the beginning, I was feeling the orange, and I tried to get away from it, but I could not. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to fill in the outside triangles. But the thing is, since I am... It's not going to take as long as it looks. Oh yeah, one other thing is while I'm painting, you might notice this. I often curl the brush because you can get it so that it has... Will it focus? Yes. A super fine point. So actually, I probably could get it to zoom in, but all the hairs on here are like twisted like a cone. And when I pick it up, it gives it that nice like sharp point that allows me to get the fill in here in the triangles. Yeah, there we go. I'm also playing like kind of a certain game here because I'm doing this quickly. Like it'll actually only take me a minute to go around the whole border. But at the same time, when the image is finished, part of what's nice about it is when it has the illusion of like slight perfection with just a few like human touches. So if I go too fast and just kind of like frankly sloppily like put it in, there's no point because then at the end it won't have like the same effect. But I am going to mix color as I'm going up this way, so yeah. Anyway, the questions. Art books that I recommend? Yeah, so I 100%, if you're doing anything with color, you gotta read On the Interaction of Color by Joseph Albers. Joseph Albers was the first guy ever to have a solo painting. Let's see, I'm also trying to figure out how I'm going to hold this stuff while I'm working so you guys can see what I'm doing. So I'm trying to figure out a lot of stuff while I'm talking to you guys, so stick with me, trust the plan. There we go. So yeah, Joseph Albers was the first guy to ever have a solo retrospective of his life's work at the Metropolitan Museum of Art while he was still alive, which might not sound that cool, but it's really badass actually. So he's this beast mode painter. Pause that train of thought. So I'm going to come up around the outside and fill in these triangles coming up around the outside. But here's the thing. I like to, when you're making images, you want to always be thinking about how can I make this more visually interesting? And you don't want to pass up opportunities to put in visual interest into the image. When people even ask me, you can see just the binder's coming out, just the glue. Give me that fat paint. I need the fat paint. Yeah, there we go. Often when people ask me to critique their images, the main critique is, here you had an opportunity to do something interesting, but you didn't. Like, let's say like when I'm drawing, if I draw a woman and I just leave her, let's say her shirt blank, or I don't put in like a necklace, or I don't put in something like that. I can do that intentionally, but all those are little opportunities to like do something interesting. And at the end, when you have like a nice work of art or something that you think is nice, it's usually the result of taking those opportunities. And as you get better and better and better at image making, that's really what happens. You get more and more of these little points that you can dig in and say, oh, here I can do something cool. Here I can do something cool. Here I can do something cool. Where when you were first starting out, you would just plow through and not even think of that. So just a little rant there. So what I'm doing right now on that note is I'm going to take some of this color. This is cadmium yellow. This is cadmium orange. If you saw the painting mixing show, these are some of the warmest colors that I have in the palette. And what I'm going to do is whenever I come up, so I did these two, I'm going to come up around the outside. I'm just going to put a tiny bit of yellow in, just like a tiny bit. I'll probably put in too much because I want to make sure it shows up visually. And I want it to just slightly have just like the slightest fade up into yellow. So slight that like if two were next to each other, you wouldn't necessarily notice it. But when the whole thing is strung together, then you can see that there's like a slight visual fade. Like actually, you can see here, there's not that much of a difference between these two colors. But as we get to the top, the fade will become more obvious. So, Joseph Albers asking me about art books. There's this book called On the Interaction of Color, and it's really awesome, and it's all about how colors interact with one another. And I highly recommend it to anyone doing anything with art at all, especially if color is involved, because the way people think about how color operates is usually incorrect. Because in your everyday life, you have a blue shirt. Your color description is like utilitarian. So you have a blue shirt and it's blue. It's the same color blue all the time in your mind because you're matching it with, your pants, or you're, matching it with a baseball hat, like whatever. So you don't think about how the blue changes in different lights, how it changes when it's next to other colors. But when you're composing an image like this, that color conception actually hurts you quite a bit. The idea that things just like are one color and that is like an ultimate property that the color has independent of the things around it basically makes it impossible to paint. And that's like the hardest thing to get people to break down when they're starting to paint. In reality, colors are completely and totally contextual based on all the colors around them. This already looks kind of dope. A really good example of that. Wow, look how much orange I got in the yellow over here. Look at that. Fucking what's going on, man? It's fine though. It's fine for the stream. So a really good example to try and illustrate what I'm trying to say that you'll get if you read this book called On the Interaction of Color is like, let's say you just walked up to a piano, right? And you just played a note. You just picked a random note and played it. And someone says, by the way, I'm also trying to figure out how to hold this stuff. So I'm thinking about a lot of things at once right now. So you play a random note on the piano and someone says, okay, is that a high note or a low note? Well, I mean, how do you answer that? If it was in a certain context, it would be a high note. If it was in a different context, it would be a low note. The note doesn't have like this inherent property of highness or lowness. That's actually exactly how I was trying to hold the paper close up, but my hand was too wobbly. That's actually exactly how color is. You think of like, oh, this is orange, and it has this like ultimate property of being exactly that color, but it's not. If you put it on a light background, it would be a dark orange. If you put it on a dark background, it would be a light orange. All the time working on paintings, that happens to me. Where, let's say, I'm painting on the dark, and I'm like, oh man, this color is so nice and light. And then I'll take that color and put it onto another part of the picture, and it'll look like 100% a complete and total different color. From when we were little kids, you guys probably remember some of those optical illusions, where it's like, oh my god, I bet you can't believe that like this square and this square are the same color, but they're on different backgrounds. Even though that seems kind of like trite and like obvious, its implications for art making are huge. And that's what you'll get if you read that book called On the Interaction of Color by Joseph Albers. So I highly recommend that. His paintings, it's actually pretty crazy. I'll talk about it a little bit as I'm making this happen right now. His paintings, if you look them up online, they look really lame. I added way too much yellow, but it's okay. We're just going to roll with it. His paintings look kind of lame because they're just these squares on like square backgrounds. But what he's actually doing is he's not painting like, oh, I'm going to make a nice picture, like that kind of painter. He's painting as a scientist. He's literally just making these square paintings to study how colors look when they're next to each other. So talk about being, I'll use the word obsessive, but you guys probably know the word that I'm thinking of, which is an insensitive word. But yeah, and he actually never mixed paint ever. Because the thing is, if you mix paint, if you're being like hardcore, here right now, perfect example, I have this nice light orange. But it would be kind of difficult for me from a scientific perspective, if you're really thinking about the wavelength of the color and stuff, to just bust out this exact mixture again, right? So what he would do is he would never mix his paint. He would just buy like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tubes of paint from all different manufacturers, and then have these like hundreds and hundreds of tubes because, if you buy cadmium red from one company, it's going to be slightly different than cadmium red from another company. And he would use these like slight color variations to make these abstract paintings, and then he would literally just sit there and look at them and be like, oh, that's what this shade of red looks like when it's next to this particular shade of yellow. And that was like this dude's whole life, was just being like really hardcore about color mixing. So do I like the paintings? I mean, they're all right. They're not really meant to be enjoyed in that way, but that book is really, really, really good. So what other questions are going on? I am looking. Oh yeah, how do I find a wife? I don't know. Should I go into that on the stream? I'll go into it a little bit while I wrap up these last like 4 triangles, and then I'll maybe change the subject. Honestly, I don't know if I should say this. I don't know if I should talk about how I met my wife in particular. I guess what I'll say is, I will say this. As much as I enjoy certain aspects of joking around online or things like that, there are some people that are still wholesome and still, it's kind of like, I'm trying to choose my words very carefully. Not to be sensitive about my wife, just to be sensitive about, the topic that I'm bringing up in general. Someone asked me about it. It's kind of like, if you think about it, like things have gotten like so bad in society in general that a lot of people, more than you'd think, I think, kind of know that like something's up, and they might still be like kind of conditioned. I'm not talking about my wife. She's like not conditioned at all, actually. But they might be like kind of conditioned, but they still know that like something's up. And those people, those are good people to look for. Like there are a lot of girls like that. A lot of girls still have some connection to their natural femininity. And usually this is the advice I'll give, and then I'm going to change the subject. A lot of girls do have some connection to their like natural femininity, and it's usually via some like obtuse way. Like, yeah, maybe they don't sit down and they're like, man, I love being a woman, like, because, I don't know, who knows why. But, maybe they really like nature or clothes or knitting or something that intersects with like being a girl in a traditional way. And I think that prevents them from becoming poisoned by all the craziness that's floating around out there. So you can find some of those people, and that's just a good that's a good trait to jump off from. Like, yeah, you're probably not going to meet someone who's like, wow, we have all the same opinions and views about like modern life and the Industrial Revolution. But you can find someone who has something that's blocked that wrench. People get a wrench thrown in them, and then things start to get like kind of messed up in their brain from like all the crazy propaganda. And a lot more girls than you'd think have something blocking that wrench, and you just have to look for it. All right, I feel good about that very political answer that I gave. And that's the end of the Owing dating tips part of the stream. Hold on one second. I tried to do, should I say this? It was a long time ago. I tried to like help people find other people on Twitter, because I was like, wow, if only like the feds didn't exist, like it would be perfect if I could just like pair my followers up, because if a guy and a girl both follow me and live in the same place, they're obviously weird enough to start dating. But didn't work. Anyway, dating part of the show is over. All right, that looks dope. So you can see what I said before about putting in the color and it kind of setting off the geometry there. Honestly, I kind of want to put in the other color, because I feel like it's going to set it off to the next level. So I'm just going to do it. Maybe I'll take some more questions while I'm putting in this other color. I feel like the pace is going pretty well. If you're watching this, and if you've been watching this for a while, I would really appreciate if you want to hit me up on Twitter and just let me know what you thought, like in general, because like I'm doing it, which is different than watching it. So even if you just want to be like, oh, it was cool, man, like, it's kind of like I used to do a lot of like public speaking stuff, and like when you get off stage, sometimes I still do, not public, but like, I recently had my we'll talk about it. We talk about everything on here, I guess. That's the policy. I'm laying out some cerulean blue. This is a green blue. I think it's going to look sick next to this red, orange, and yellow orange. It's nice to get colors that are kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like opposite on the colors wheel, but not in like a cheesy way. If you're on your phone or computer and want to pull up a color wheel, you can see the colors opposite each other on there. They don't necessarily look good together, but sometimes they can offset each other in a nice way if you kind of go like tweak them a little bit. So here I don't know if that made sense. We'll talk about color mixing more, but we'll see. Here we have, I'll explain it. Here we have this blue-green, okay? This orange is a red orange. So what's the opposite of red on the color wheel? I'll give you like 10 seconds to pull it up if you want. What's the opposite of red is green. What's the opposite of orange? It's blue. So we have a red orange and a green blue. Does that make sense? It's like the two colors that are secretly hidden in here are opposites. So it's going to look hot when I pose them together. If you didn't get it, it's okay. We'll talk more about color mixing later. And when I'm choosing the colors for this wheel on the outside, I kind of have two... look at this. This is the other thing. When you're using paint, it's always different like consistencies. The cerulean blue is so... Did someone? Oh, it's actually really funny. My wife just texted me and said it's okay, you can talk about me. It's really funny. So you can see the cerulean blue is really like tough and like lumpy. So I kind of have to just like dig it out a little bit. Okay. And I could put some white in here, but I'm not going to do it. So when I'm choosing colors for the ring on the outside, I have like two options. This is fading from dark to light. So I can do a fade the same way, where this is going to be dark and then it's going to fade into light. Or I can do it the opposite way and put the dark up here and have it fade into light, and they'll be going opposite of each other. It's not like one's better or worse, but it's just like a decision I have to make. One thing, I'm just going to move this a little bit. One thing when you're making images that you want to think about when you're like composing them, let's see, I wish I could just like have this hover like right here. Maybe this is good. Oh, I got the blue on the paper. It's okay. One thing you want to think about when you're making images like this is contrast. Contrast is one way that you can level up your composition and painting ability. Oh, look at this blue. I love it. So good. Honestly, nothing feels as good as just laying down color. Honestly, like if you are, for real, actually, if you're watching this and you're like just kind of like a depressed person, you know, we've all been there, and you're like, oh, I really need a hobby. I just, you know, I don't know. Dude, I promise that laying down color and painting is just the dopest feeling. I mean, you could even just, you don't even have to be good at drawing. You could just do that geometry I laid out before, lay some color in there. Dude, it's so good. Also, girls love it. Speaking of the dating stuff. Okay, perfect. Get that like electric edge in between the blue and the orange. Perfect. Got another. Hold on, I'm just going to make sure. I'm actually going to silence my phone, but I also just want to make sure. Okay, we're good. Cool. All right, perfect. So, got that blue in there. And then, I don't really know how I want to have it fade up. I think that what I'm going to do is, since this orange, fades more yellow, I'm going to also have the blue fade in the direction of yellow. The thing is, so, it's going to be kind of a little advanced color theory, I guess. The cadmium yellow, that's what this was up here, is a warm yellow. So, what does that mean? If you want to get the color wheel out, get the color wheel out, because it's going to help you while I'm talking about all this stuff, if you want. What does that mean? Or you can imagine a rainbow. So yellow has green underneath it and orange above it, right? So this yellow is a warm yellow, which means that it's tending towards orange. So you can kind of imagine there's like a little orange naturally in that warm yellow, which is unlike this yellow I'm about to deploy right now. How am I going to get that blue out? I'm just going to paint over it, dude. It doesn't matter. Also, if you leave some imperfections in, it looks kind of dope. That's how people know like a human made it. You don't want it to be totally perfect, actually. Okay, so this yellow is tending towards orange. It's a warm yellow. Unlike this yellow that I just laid out, just going to make sure I get all the blue off my brush, which is a cool yellow. So this is called lemon yellow. It's like the color of a lemon. If you imagine the color of a lemon versus the color of a school bus, you are imagining cool yellow versus warm yellow. So I wouldn't use this yellow up here to make green because it like has orange in it, and the orange is going to cancel out the blue. If I just took orange and blue and mixed them, since they're opposites on the color wheel, they just like cancel each other out. So this warm orangey yellow is not going to make good greens. This cool yellow, it's almost like, again, you can imagine it has some green in it. It's like on the other side of yellow in the rainbow, tending towards the cooler colors. So this will make a good green if I start to just drop a little bit in there. But it's too powerful. That was way too much. So I'm just going to take a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Oh, it looks so good. But I want that transition to be really subtle. So I kind of added way too much. You can actually see, there we go, I got this nice kind of like dark green now. Let's just go for it. All right, cool. I'll take a few more questions while I'm painting in this color. Yeah, you can see this transition is going to be way more than I wanted, but it's okay. It's okay for right now. Cool, cool, cool. All right, I'm looking for questions. Okay, there's no questions. I guess that means I have to come up with a cool anecdote. Oh yeah, so this is perfect for what we're doing right now. So I mentioned this on an earlier stream, to say that for the millionth time. But I did study with a Tibetan painter for a minute, and that's where I get a lot of my conception about working with paint from. In Central Asia, in Nepal and Tibet, what they do is they'll literally crush up these stones and make paint with them. So that's really awesome, and I could go off on that and about all the sort of like scientific, artistic intersection behind that. But the crazy thing is that, so you're working with this guy, and that means that the paint, it's sitting in a little jar, and it's kind of like natural peanut butter. If anyone has ever bought like supernatural peanut butter, supernatural peanut butter, that'd be funny. If anyone's ever bought like very natural peanut butter, it separates, and you get the oils and the peanuts and the water all kind of like sitting in the jar together. And that's kind of like what the paint is. So every time, I put way too much yellow in this, but it'll be cool. So every time you dip your brush into the jar, you have to make sure you pick up the right amount of pigment, binder, and water. You can literally see them separated in this jar. So every time you put your brush down, you have to make sure, like I said, you're getting the right amount. So if you mess it up, let's just say, wow, this is way more green than I thought it would be, but it's cool. It's kind of, I don't want to say unfortunate. It's a little annoying that happened because this is going to butt up against the green of the hill. And I think what I'll do, wow, it's like the same color. It's okay. What I'm going to do is I'll put a nice like yellow outline around these triangles, and it'll look really dope. It'll actually look good that the colors are married together. So anyway, I mentioned the natural peanut butter paint. So if you mess it up, you could dip your brush in. Let's say you dip your brush in, and each time you dip it in, you're only getting water and pigment. You're not getting any of the binder, any of the glue. At the end, the teacher can just walk over and wipe the paint right off the canvas because there's no glue in there. It's just the pigment and the water. Let's say you mess it up and you're only grabbing, you're grabbing way too much binder. You put way too much of the glue in. At the end, the paint's going to crack because it's like 90% glue, and like your whole painting after you've been working on it will just crack and like annihilate itself. So it's pretty awesome because, like I said, every time you dip the brush in, you have to make sure you're getting the perfect amount. I don't have to do that too much because I'm working with these commercially made paints, but that's something I think about because after a while, maybe I'll squeeze one tube of paint out and it'll be just like oh, you can't even see what I'm doing. Fuck. Sorry, I'm getting used to talking and doing this, so like I said, you guys are in on the ground level over here. So yeah, it's something I think about because, yeah, sometimes the paints will be really chunky, sometimes they won't be. Mostly I just want to talk about Tibetan painting because no one asked me a question. Are there any theologians or theological works you found particularly interesting? Oh, dude. Yeah, where do I start with that? Well, I guess I keep going outside the camera. Like I said, I'm still getting used to it. Yeah, well, honestly, that's probably something that we'll talk about a lot. One of the main guys that was huge for me that actually punctured through my, frankly, initial aversion to Christianity, like back in the day, I'm talking like 10 years ago, I never would have ever thought about taking Christianity seriously at all. Not to offend anyone, that was just the vibe. I was raised in like a hyper-materialist environment, and I literally was the stereotype of like, Eastern religions are all good, and Christianity is uniquely bad, and all the other ones are super cool for no reason. But yeah, so C.S. Lewis, even though people kind of pitch him as like, people really underrate him, honestly. They rate him as kind of like a low-level dude. But he's awesome, and I really do consider him a theologian, even though he's like a writer. It's kind of like how people say Milton, like the guy who wrote Paradise Lost. People call him like the not forgotten, but like the secret reformer. Like he was part of the Reformation, even though he wasn't a theologian. It's kind of how I think of C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis was definitely a theologian, even though he was like presenting as someone that was like quote unquote like just writing books. And yeah, in Mere Christianity, he has this thought experiment that for me, I mean, the whole time I was studying theology and studying mysticism and studying everything, I probably thought about it every other day for like 10 years. It truly blew my mind so hard that even at the time, I was like, wow, I don't know why this is so crazy, and I couldn't explain it, and I could never put it down, and it was a really big part of me coming around to God and stuff, honestly. Basically, if you haven't read it, I recommend you do, especially if you're into like apologetics and stuff like that. In the beginning, he talks about how when people argue, they appeal. This is how he kicks off the whole book, which was originally a radio broadcast, so it's easy to read. He talks about people appeal to some standard. Like if someone takes someone's seat on an airplane, they'll say like, well, I was there first. Or if someone steals something, they'll say that's not fair. And it's kind of like we all have this standard built within us. And he builds this kind of like argument against moral relativism that basically is, if you... I don't remember if this is specifically in the book or if it's what I took away from the book, but like if you got rid of everyone on Earth who thought stealing was bad, would stealing still be bad? Well, of course it would. But how can that be possible in a moral relativist framework? Because within, an atheistic or moral relativist society, things are only bad because people think they're bad. And just reading that back in the day, I was like, wow, this is completely insane, and I really can't explain that. And I really imagined it. I was this like Buddhist stoner, and I was like, let's say we put everyone in camps and got rid of them that thought stealing was bad, but it would still be bad. But why? And I use that on people all the time. Not even like I'm trying to like trick them or something, but I ask people that, like people who are like atheist, or, if they ask me, I don't do like aggressive apologetics like Ray Comfort style, but if people ask me, I'm just like, yeah, but then like, why would it be bad? And you get the strangest answers from people because it makes no sense. And I would say C.S. Lewis, other theologians, Augustine, obviously. That's another thing I'll talk about, because I'm about to wrap up these triangles, so I don't want to open up a full another question. But, so that's kind of a surface level one, C.S. Lewis. But I also have been going way deeper into like Augustine's implications for the whole development of like philosophy in the West and the East even, that being orthodoxy. And it's just so interesting, man. He really is like such a juncture on the tree where everything bifurcates. Because I feel like he set the stage for so many things. There's a book called On the Place of Augustine in the Blessed Orthodox Church by Seraphim Rose. And it's all about Augustine's place in orthodoxy. And he basically paints this picture of like, yeah, orthodoxy like should respect Augustine, and they do respect him, but maybe they think he was wrong about some stuff. But it was just so interesting because I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying I read the book and that's what it said. Because I feel like in the West we took this very particular road of like thinking that we could reason out everything, whereas in some of the Eastern theology they're just very upfront, being like, yeah, you're not going to figure that out. Like even the question of like, okay, so God knows everything. So does God know who's going to be saved? And then does that mean God makes people to not be saved because God knows that they're not going to be saved, but you have free will? So does God control people's free will? And I feel like just even that question alone and just like wrestling with that sets the stage for so much theology. Augustine's all the way back in the day. That's pretty much like what Calvin was on about way later, like obviously hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years later. And then just giving a really quick, I'm kind of oversimplifying this so I can get back to talking about painting. But and then I feel like in orthodoxy, the way it's presented in these books is kind of like, yeah, it's a crazy question, but you're not going to figure it out, so just, don't even try. And I'm not really saying one of those is correct or incorrect, but it's just so interesting to me that there's this guy all the way back in the early church, that guy being Augustine, who set the stage so hard for so many questions that people would even be wrestling with today. Like if I meet up with a guy and we end up talking about theology, what are we talking about? Like free will, original sin, all this stuff that I feel like is dealt with in Augustine right off the bat, right? All right, how long have we been going here? I don't want this to be too long, but also I feel like, I don't know, am I really going to take it this far and not go further? It's been an hour and 40 minutes. I would feel bad just like stopping right now. I really can't tell. We'll go a little bit further. Like I said, I have no idea how to like pace these things. Like, I don't know. Maybe I should have like drawn in the part before. Maybe I shouldn't have. I also can't tell like if I want to end up like going back to paintings on here. Like if I finish a paint, like if I start a painting, like let's say we get to this point and it's impossible to say what percent done I am, but we get to this point. Are people tuning in next time really going to want to watch me start a painting that I'm like halfway done with? Like obviously not. So I don't know. Maybe I'll just take like 20 minutes and like see how far I can get and kind of, I don't know. Yeah, should I like aggressively wrap this up? I really can't tell. The border looks pretty hot though. The sap green. Oh, also by the way, I just want to throw this out there. I'm really totally cool like making mistakes on here and like having things not turn out well or whatever. Like I've been painting for so long. I'm like, frankly, maybe it makes it sound like a dick, but I'm like very confident in my painting ability. So like, I'm sure there'll be some episodes of this where I like wrap it up and I'm like, wow, this looks really bad. So whatever. It's more about the process, right? It's also kind of nice because like people have the illusion with artists that like everything they ever do is like 100% perfect. And it's just not true. Whenever you look at any artist's like setup, you're only seeing like the gems. You know, they're very carefully curating what they're showing you. So it's good to keep that in mind. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to bust out some bigger brushes. Let's make this last 20 minutes like a fat 20 minutes and then we'll probably wrap it up. Let's see where this goes. It's kind of more fun for me to get it a little bit looser and less controlled anyway. You guys have been watching me go like so hard on the controlled situation. So I'm going to get out. This might be too big. This is maybe the brush size I'm looking for. I'm looking at these brushes right now. This one looks pretty good. Let's see how this goes. All right, so yeah, like I said, I'm kind of trying to... Oh, wait, is this shit? Oh, man. So this is like a rookie mistake right here. I think I let some acrylic paint dry in this brush, and now it's like all hard. So yeah, I mentioned, actually it's perfect tie up with the beginning. I mentioned like I wasn't sure how like tight and controlled I should be. You guys have just watched me do this, and like it's kind of the difference between like a sniper rifle and like a flamethrower. Like I could sit here and just, let's see if there's any color in this brush. There's not. Like I could sit here and just go like so hardcore like on the sniper rifle, like trying to make everything perfect thing, but I don't know. Since we came this far, let's just kind of go for it and see how it goes. So I'm going to throw in this yellow sky. I love using a yellow sky in my images. I truly don't know why, but I just love it. It has this like bright connotation. It's almost like it's like a nice like morning, I guess. Like the sun is just being like super aggressive. Love doing it. Look, it's so funny. I talked about how I wanted the sap green to be perfect. You guys watched me like lay it in for like so long, and then that's like the worst looking part. So whatever. Okay. Maybe I should be going like at this pace for the stream. Who knows though? Okay, boom, and I'm gonna come in. Yeah. The other interesting thing I think about when I'm making images like this, I guess I'll take some more questions, and then maybe I just won't have like time at the end where I only take questions. Like I'll just start taking them. Oh, yo, also if you put my name in the question you ask, I can't do super chats yet, so it's very democratic. If you put my name though, the chat kind of like highlights it. And it's way easier for me to see that you're asking a question. So just throwing that out there. Oh, yeah. Boom. Oh, yeah. I should definitely be using a bigger brush. Okay, cool. Thank you for hanging out and watching me figure this out live. There we go. And the other cool thing about these paints, I didn't mention this yet, but you're seeing me put them on super opaque, i.e. not transparent. But if I do it really loosely, they will function like watercolor, and I can get them to like release and become watercolor. So let's see. We'll just I'm not gonna do another stream where I finish this up. So let's just see how this goes right now. Go kind of quick. Got the yellow sky. Boom. And yeah, now that I'm doing it like this, I think it would be more cool for people to watch if I'm just going like fast and loose. Like who cares if it's perfect, right? No one really cares. Nice. Okay. I'm going to put in this girl's face right now. The thing is, normally I put it in white. I like using like the paper white for like the skin tone. I don't like using like the tan. It doesn't really fit my like image situation. But, well, let's get some more hills in the back. I guess that is kind of how Bob Ross does it when he does painting. It's very like fast and loose, right? All right, so I'm looking for sap green and olive green. What is that? Where's sap green? Where's my green? Okay, I'm looking for it. And yeah, for the last like 20 minutes, if people want to ask me questions, go ahead, ask away. I can't find sap green. I'm kind of, it's right here. I was like, I'm right on the edge of being like, should I keep looking for it? But okay. Any experience with fountain pens? Dude, that's a good question. I don't exactly know what people mean by fountain pens specifically. I am assuming you mean the kind of pens where there's like a cartridge inside and it has like that metal nib. I actually haven't used those, but I have used a lot. the pens that you dip in ink. That's why I've never looked at fountain pens. I've always been using the pens that you have a metal nib and you dip them in ink. Really like those a lot. Because I like them so much, I've never checked out the fountain pens. If you think about it from my perspective, I'm just going to throw some it's still wet though. I will just wait a minute. Actually, I'll just throw in some grass while I'm talking. I'm just going to gotta go for it and see how this turns out. Just throw in a little. Maybe this will be a good idea. Maybe it won't be, but whatever, we'll see. Yeah, so I've always used the kind of... probably should have made this lighter. If you're probably looking at it on the stream like, yo, what the heck? But when it dries, it will have a slightly different quality. Probably should have done it lighter, but whatever. We're just going for it right now. Yeah, so I've used the pens that you dip in ink a lot, and I really, really, really like those. But I've never used the cartridge ones. From my perspective, like if I'm using the pens that I'm dipping them in ink, why would I switch over to the cartridge ones? Because then I have to like worry about like getting the cartridges and stuff. But yeah, I love ink. I actually spent a year or two only doing like black and white images, and it was a really, really, really good time. I really loved it. And it made me think about art totally differently. So I will bust into some ink stuff on the stream for sure. I'll probably combine like sacred geometry show with ink stuff maybe. I even did a lot of like ink brush stuff back in the day, which is totally different than the fountain pen situation. But no, not fountain pen specifically. Let's see if I can get this white. Sorry, I keep covering it with my hand, but see if I can get this white to cover up the lines so we can get kind of like a face in here. Maybe it'll be lame, but whatever, who cares? I'm just going to fix that a little bit. Looking at questions, someone asked me, why did I go the Catholic route rather than Orthodoxy? Dude, honestly, I actually haven't decided yet. I really hate that I have to decide. If you're on Twitter, I mean, obviously you're probably on Twitter because you're here watching me. I post all these memes about like, oh, like pre-schism girlfriend or like, remember before the schism? And honestly, it's just because I don't want to have to choose between the two churches. It really sucks. Honestly, I literally think about it every single day. Because I really just love them both, man. I love them both. They're kind of like a mom and a dad to me now at this point. Maybe I should have chosen earlier and then I wouldn't have that problem. But I don't know. I've also always felt like I'm just going to go for it. Let's just see what we can get done in 20 minutes right here. So I'm just going to go while I'm talking. I've always kind of felt like I'm very against, like, I guess what you could call, like, hardcore, like, ecumenicism, which is where people are just like, oh, you know, whatever. Like, the differences between these religions, like, they don't really matter. Like, who cares? I'm painting wet into wet, but, you know, fuck it. Let's just see how it goes. The differences between these religions, like, they don't matter. Like, whatever. I'm very against that because it kind of erases what's good about each individual religion to put it into some, like, gray mold just so everyone can, like, get along and be, like, smiling and happy. At the same time, I feel like I kind of do have this energy of like, you know, I don't know, dude, like you're on Twitter, like you see how much everyone like argues and like fights and like, I love theological debates. I mean, I literally listen to them like while I'm cleaning my house. At the same time though, it gets like so venomous and sometimes I'm like, you know, we're on the same team ultimately. Like, you know, I always have this like image in my head of like, the house is like on fire and someone's like on the couch like overdosing on heroin and like people are breaking into the safe in the back and someone's like, you don't even know about the Photian schism? And I'm like, dude, that is not the issue right now. And like, yeah, it's really important to like, it's actually almost probably the most important thing to like argue about those things and like debate them. But at the same time, sometimes I'm like, dude, let's just keep in mind that we are like brothers in some way. So yeah, I don't know, man. I love the Catholic Church. I love Catholicism. I love so much about it. I mean, it's like the mother of like Western culture in so many ways. People are going to get mad. I don't care about that. You know, I just love it. I feel good when I think about it. The art, I mean, you shouldn't choose a religion based on art, but you know, it's just a great tree that's given off like so much good fruit. At the same time, I really like Orthodoxy a lot. I feel like kinship with a lot of the ideas. The art, sometimes the theology, like, you know, it's interesting because sometimes people explain to me things from an Orthodox perspective and I'm like, oh, like that's really interesting. Like, wow, like that's what you guys think about like original sin. Like, yeah, I always kind of did not think that, babies would like go to hell. I always thought that was kind of weird. But now that you're explaining original sin in this way that doesn't imply that you inherit guilt, that you only inherit this like fallen nature, I guess. I'm not a priest, so don't take what I'm saying as like authoritative. I'm just a painter, obviously. But like, wow, that actually does make like a lot of sense. So I don't know, man. I feel like I've gotten so much from both of them that I really hate that I have to choose. I'm gonna put this red sun up here. It's gonna be badass. Yeah, I really hate that I have to choose. I really wish I didn't. Maybe that's why I'm putting it off. I don't really know what I'm gonna do. I also intentionally don't talk about it too much on Twitter because C.S. Lewis talks about this also. Oh, laying down this red on this yellow right now is just so tight. C.S. Lewis talks about this a little bit also, but like when you're shopping for like a church, it's really easy to make it like about you and make it like you being like, oh, like what church is good enough for me? Like I'm this really great, important person, like in case you didn't know. And like everything has to be up to my standards. And I really don't want to bring that vibe. So I don't talk about it too much on Twitter, but I read about theology all the time. But not all the time, whenever I'm not working. And yeah, man, I really have no idea what I'm going to do. But whatever I do, I have love for the other people that don't make the same decision as me. Have you looked into Anglicanism? Yeah, it's like English Orthodoxy, right? That's the joke, but it's actually real. Actually, yeah, I did have a long time. That's the other thing. Like, I don't know. I love theology more than anything else, but like when I talk about stuff, I really never want to give off the vibe of like, I used to be vegan. I don't know if you know that. It's very cringe. This is some epic, like, secret cringe about me. I used to be vegan for a really long time. Then I stopped being vegan. I'm going to put in these, like, yellow sun rays. Oh, get out of here. It's telling me my, like, drive isn't signed in. And it's kind of this weird vibe. I'm just going to put them in fat. Put in some fat sun rays right now. Why not? We're just going for it. It's this vibe, like, if I go to a dinner or something and someone's like, oh, I'm vegan. I don't want to be like, oh, I used to be vegan, because then it makes me sound like, yeah, I used to be dumb, and then I got smart, idiot. It's like there's no way to tell someone like, yeah, oh, you're Buddhist? Yeah, I used to be really into Buddhism. It's like just saying that like implies like, oh yeah, like, and then I figured it out, idiot. So I never want to be giving off that vibe. So that being said, I really looked into Protestantism a lot. And like, I didn't choose that path. It doesn't mean I think that everyone that went down that path is stupid or something. There's a lot of like really smart Protestant people and a lot of really like brilliant Protestant theologians. Just ended up not really being the path for me. Anglicanism is really interesting though, because, it's kind of like whenever I read a scholarly book on it, this is the vibe I get. The scholar will be like, okay, let's just get one thing straight. People always act like Anglicanism is Catholicism without the church. Without the Pope. That's a gross oversimplification. So just to get that out of the way, let's just, that is not what it is at all. And then once they've cleared that up, they're like, okay, but it kind of is like Catholicism without the Pope, which is really funny. And yeah, this guy like on YouTube, I think he's Calvinist actually. Oh, by the way, I'm putting in the wavy and the straight rays over here. This is like a classic like medieval motif. The straight rays represent the light of the sun, and the curvy rays represent the heat of the sun. That's why they're both like this. In case you see this in an image at a museum with a girl, you can really impress her by just busting that out. It's also a really good motif. Wow, this is way cooler now that I'm just going like hard and fast. I guess I should have been doing that the whole time, but that's why I put the word test in the title of this stream. So now we know for next time, right? Also, I did think I should lay out, how I compose the images and stuff. Anyway, this guy I like on YouTube named Ryan Reeves said that, I think it was him, that King Henry took the strange action of like throwing the Pope out the window and wanting him to stop only halfway down. It's like he wanted to like institute this big change, but he didn't want it to go like full on hardcore Protestant Reformation. Anglicanism is interesting, but wasn't the path I chose, obviously. I feel like with a lot of the Protestant stuff, it's interesting because like the nature of the authority and the tradition gets like kind of put in the air. I don't mean that in a bad way. Every tradition has its own like weird sides. Just bringing up that one. I got this book all about Anglicanism, and the whole thing focused about. Actually, Amazon sent me two. If you want me to send you one, maybe I will if someone wants it. The book isn't that good though. That's why I didn't advertise it on Twitter. The whole book was about the Anglican situation in Africa and how all these Africans who are like hardcore Anglican are kind of like, wait a second, like why do we even need like the church in England anyway? We can just do our own thing. That's a gross oversimplification. I am not a theologian. I'm just kind of casually off the cuff giving you my impression of stuff. But yeah, Anglicanism is pretty cool. My wife is kind of like whatever a weeb is for the United Kingdom. That's like what my wife is, like an Anglophile. So for a minute she was like, "Ooh, Anglicanism," and I was like, "I don't know. Let's get a few books. Let's look into it." It didn't really play out though. Okay, I'm gonna put the face of this girl in. I'm kind of gonna put in a little bit of hair. Let's I'm just gonna go for it. We're just doing it live. I'm gonna throw in some yellow ochre. Then I'll wrap this up in like 15 minutes. I don't want these things to be like crazy long, because I feel like then someone on YouTube is like, "Oh my god, 3 hours? Yo, I'm not freaking watching 3 hours right now." But I also kind of feel like it just got good. Don't you kind of feel that way? I feel like it took so long to get to this point that I'm really not about to like turn it off right now. You can keep asking me questions. I just don't want to spend too much time looking at this. Do you feel like participating in organized Christianity is essential for being a Christian? Oh, dude, great question for me to like pop off on right now. Yes. What was the question? Do I feel like being part of a tradition is essential for being Christian? Well, man, you know, it's interesting, and I really like talking about this stuff while I haven't 100% made up my mind yet, because do I put in the hair down fold or open fold? I'm gonna go open fold. I might regret it, but it's okay. In real life, I organize girls by whether or not they have hair like this, and then their face is there. Can you see that? Or if their hair is like this, and then their face comes down. Should get like a kind of term for that. Anyway, it's a really good question, especially for me to talk about while I'm painting. Kind of, yeah, man. I kind of do feel like you have to be part of a tradition to take part in Christianity. I didn't used to think that. The thing was, so again, I'm not like talking shit about anyone. Honestly, like I've only been looking at this stuff for like not my whole life. So, you know, I'm not saying that people that have drawn other conclusions than me are stupid. I'm not going to give that caveat every time, but just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, when I first poked into the Protestant Reformation stuff, I was like, dude, this is way cooler than people make it sound. And I really feel like the Protestants don't get a fair shake when people are kind of just doing like, I guess what you can call like meme apologetics. Like when people make fun of like Catholic theology, like whether it's fair or not, or whether it's like accurate or not, you know, they're like talking about like what Catholicism is. And when people make fun of Orthodoxy, it's kind of like, okay, I can see how you could jump here. A lot of the Protestant stuff I feel like doesn't give Protestants like a totally fair shake. And that's how I felt when I first looked into it. So I looked into it and I was like, some of this stuff is kind of tight. And like, yeah, actually I am kind of wondering like, why do I need like, you know, this tradition, and why do I need people to like basically tell me what to do? Okay, I'm using this ultramarine color. This is like hardcore like lapis lazuli blue. It might be a mistake, but I kind of just want like a nice, or should I do it in cerulean? I really can't tell. It might be a mistake, but you know, whatever. We're kind of rushing it at the end. Let's just do it. I think it'll look dope though. So yeah, I was like, why do I need like, you know, all these people telling me what to do? And like, I could just read the Bible. Like, yeah, this makes so much sense. I'm going to put in like sleeping eyes. Just kind of like sleeping. Boom. Boom. Looks pretty good to me. And I'll put in the nose. Actually, I'm not going to put the nose in that color though. I'm going to put the nose in yellow ochre. So yeah, I was like, this is actually dope. Like, what's wrong with this? And then someone on Twitter sent me a book called Rock and Sand. They actually sent the book to my P.O. box. And it's about the Protestant Reformation. Wow, this was such a risky move, but it actually looks okay. That was a risky maneuver though. Pro tip, when you're painting women, you don't want to emphasize their nose. That is the number one tip. That's what makes women look old or weird in drawings. And if you have a drawing and it's like not realistic, or actually even if it is realistic, and you're like, why does this look weird? Like I can't make this woman's face look right. You probably put too much detail into the nose, and that's why you kind of just want to like get rid of it. And also, I'm just gonna paint in a little mouth right over here. This might look, I don't know. You know, everything could look weird, but I think it'll be good. It's gonna cool. Nice. Looks dope. Oh, you guys can't even see it. Fuck, that was so tight. Yeah, I gotta figure out how I can get the camera closer, but Yeah, that looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. I'll take it. Kind of going for like a primitive graphic situation here, I guess. And since we're just going hard near the end, I'm going to put some flowers on this hill. Now we're in Bob Ross world. Get some nice little flowers in. Okay, anyway, so I was talking about Protestantism. And I was like, yeah, this would be dope. But I got this book called Rock and Sand. And it really totally changed my perception of everything. Because it really made me see that, like, Christianity, like, I feel like Americans have this view of Christianity where it's like Christianity is based on the Bible. But this picture he paints in this book called Rock and Sand is more like the Bible emerged out of the tradition that is Christianity. Christianity is a tradition that the Bible emerged out of. And like, it's funny because I can look, I have Twitter, right? Obviously, you guys know that. So I can look back at questions I was asking like last summer and last year. And I asked this question. I posted on Twitter and I was like, you know, if God wanted us to do all this stuff, like why isn't this stuff in the Bible? And it really was like perplexing to me. And then someone, I think maybe jokingly, was like, you know, Jesus didn't write the Bible. Duh. And I was like, well, yeah, of course. But like the more I thought about it, I was like, oh yeah, Jesus didn't leave like the Bible. He left a tradition. And that tradition is the church. And the tradition of passing down information. Those flowers, they look all right. Here's the thing. It's funny because when I'm doing this stuff, I kind of like to not push it over the edge into being like too sweet, I guess you could say. I feel like the flowers kind of pushed it there. So I'm going to put a skull down below just to balance it out. And I'm going to put the skull in white so it takes some like visual precedence. And then I'm probably just going to put something quick on the border and then maybe we'll wrap this up. Let's see how it goes though. Okay, I got to wrap this up. So yeah, anyway, yeah, the answer for me is yes. And after reading that book, I feel like my view completely and totally changed. Where I started, like I said, viewing Christianity as a tradition rather than, you know, something based on a book, rather than anything. It's like a tradition of passing information down. So that's kind of like why I feel like it's almost like a fallacy. I mean, I know I'm oversimplifying. If anyone's hardcore sola scriptura, you're going to probably want to get in my DMs and be like, dude, that's not what sola scriptura is. Like, I know. But I feel like in general, when like normal people, let's say, who don't know anything about theology are like, oh yeah, where is that in the Bible? It's like, dude, Christianity isn't based on the Bible. It's a tradition and a set of information that's been passed down over time. So that's a really long way of saying that it totally changed my conception of things. It made me think of, yeah, Christianity as a tradition. That long answer that, yeah, I feel like you kind of do have to like be part of the church or something to be a part of. Maybe not the church, but a church at least. I don't want to ramble on too long. Let's get another fat question I can like open up while I'm going through here. Could you tell a story about your Buddhist days? Also, what were your thoughts on Taoism? It's a really good question. Well, okay, like I said in the beginning, you know, sometimes I'm sure these are going to be dope. Sometimes they're going to be okay. I feel like this one's going okay. I feel all right about this. But we're going to wrap it up soon anyway. It's not really about like the image in the end. The way I thought about this is that, you know, kind of just be like a live, like visual experimentation. The thing about the painting stuff is like I could, I kind of like that little whack eye in there, is that, you know, I could paint something and have it be 100% perfect if I've painted it like 100 times before. But like, who wants that? Does anyone really care about that? Not really. It's way more interesting to like watch, you know, things just like kind of pop off live. So we'll wrap this up soon. I'm trying to think like if this like really, I don't know how. Oh, I know what I should do with this. I got this. I'm going to throw down some dark trees. That's what we need. Okay. The question was, can I tell a story about my Buddhist days? Yeah, I'm looking for burnt umber right now. Oh, here it is. Cool. Yeah, what would be a good story about that? I don't know. I did a lot of weird stuff. Oh, I have a good one. I did a lot of weird stuff. Honestly, the deal with my Buddhism situation was that if I'm talking to people that like know what they're talking about, I always give a caveat where I'm like, I was Buddhist in the sense that ... It's not like I like officially belong to some like hardcore like lineage or, I was like Buddhist in the sense that I was like a white guy who really liked doing psychedelics and that Buddhism was my like mental framework. So just to be clear, it's not like I was like studying with like some master or something. And all the caveats I said before where it's like, like I don't want to make people feel stupid if they're like into Buddhism. It's just not my thing anymore. But yeah, here's a good one. So I was like really right on the edge of I was really right on the edge of like trying to be Tibetan Buddhist for a long time. And I was like, do I really want to do this? I like looked into classes about like learning Tibetan. I was studying Tibetan art a lot. And I was like, damn, I'm really about to like pull off the freeway at this like highway called Tibetan Buddhism. Like it looks really dope. And I really wanted to start practicing. So I kind of needed a guru. And I went to this really weird, so obviously it's kind of hard to get like a legit guru, right? Like just like go to like Kmart and they're like in like aisle 4. So this guy, what was his name? I freaking forget. When you get a guru, you need to get initiated, right? So they do these like initiation ceremonies where they like pass on like the initiation to you. And it's part informational, but also it's like mystical energy thing. So like it's not like he like initiates you being like, okay, here's what you need to know. I mean, that's like part of it, but it's also like I'm literally passing on this like mystical energy to you. That's like also a part of it. Again, like don't take this as like a textbook on Buddhism. I'm just kind of like shooting the shit with you right now. So don't get mad in my DMs being like, that's not what initiation is. It's nothing like that. Whatever. It's not really relevant to the story. So this guy was doing this like digital worldwide initiation. And he was like video casting himself. Man, I really gotta get better at putting my paints back. Now I'm looking for Viridian green. Can't find it. That's fine. So he was like live streaming himself doing an initiation. So I went to this like, it was like a converted like yoga studio with all this like Tibetan stuff around. And they gave us these like pages to chant from. And they threw him up on this like live stream. It was kind of like, remember in elementary school where they would like project from like an old school projector onto the wall. He was like projected on this white screen like very poorly and doing this initiation, and I like followed along with it. You can see this color is like a little dark and kind of whack. When you want to lighten a color like this, but you don't want to chalk it up with the white, you can use yellow ochre. So I'm grabbing some of this yellow ochre. I want like a nice dark color for these cypress trees that I'm going to drop in that'll hopefully push it out of like, I don't know. It's not really the right vibe right now, but we'll see. So I went to this like digital initiation, and you're like bowing and stuff, and it's to this like white screen that's like projecting this like poor image of this like tiny Tibetan dude who's like in Dharamsala like chanting along with you. And I was like, I don't really know too much about this, but I mean actually I did know a good amount about it, but I was like, I feel like that was not legit. I don't really feel initiated into like a particular lineage. So I was like, well, that was a fail. I just thought you guys should know that exists. It's really weird. Yeah, cypress tree energy is like literally exactly what we needed right here. So I did that. Didn't really work. And I knew this like older Tibetan woman. And she was like, oh, well, Sakya Trisden, this guy who's like a high, I'm going to have to use some Buddhist terms, who's like a high up like Vajrayana practitioner. He's like a high up like practitioner of Tibetan Buddhism, basically. Is doing a White Tara empowerment ceremony. So there's this deity named White Tara, and you can go and basically get empowered like to work with her, I guess you could say. Like you get empowered to like do practices related to this deity named White Tara, who's very popular. Tara is like probably the most popular Tibetan deity. So I was like, dude, that's legit. So I went, obviously. Side note to give you an idea of where I was at in life, I had a party the night before. I actually threw a party. It was awesome. And I was so hungover when I went to this empowerment ceremony. So you can tell how seriously I was taking my spiritual life at that time. I thought I was taking it seriously, but apparently I wasn't. And hold up, I'm going to change my glove because I just got paint like all over my glove. So I go there, and man, it was so fucking weird. It was in this like Holiday Inn like conference room in New York City. So I take the subway. I was living in the city. So I take the subway and go to this like Holiday Inn conference room. And there's all these people. And dude, when you get into Tibetan Buddhism, Like, there's some guys on Twitter who, like, really study Tibetan Buddhism, and they talk about reading, like, Nagarjuna and these philosophers. Okay, that's not who I'm talking about. That's not who is... I mean, maybe they would go to these things. They're not, like, the people that you tend to meet at these things. It's a really weird mix of, like, New Age moms who, like, maybe just happen to get, like, into Tibetan Buddhism. And the thing about Tibetan Buddhism, like, if I even just say this neutrally, I'm not even saying this, like, with any judgment at all. It's almost like Tibetan occult. Like, there's a very magical element to it. So you're meeting these, like, soccer moms who are, like, doing these, ceremonies and praying to these, like, dakinis and these, like, weird deities. And you're like, this is weird. Like, how'd you end up here? Like, you're literally, like, some mom who drives, like, a Subaru. And you probably just, like, did a shit ton of yoga and someone told you to, like, check this out. But, like, I don't know, man. Like, you're trying to read, like, off this Sanskrit, like, pamphlet that this woman just handed out. It's a really weird scene. And I met a lot of really weird people there, man. Weird in the sense of just being, like, very, like, almost, like, spiritually desperate, I guess you could say. And that's not an indictment of the system. I'm just kind of telling you an anecdote. And it was interesting because, like, I was into Buddhism from, like, a kind of, like, psychedelic, but also, like, almost, like, I don't want to say materialist. It's not really the right word. I was into it from a very particular perspective. The perspective you can imagine I would have. Yo, doesn't this look doper with the trees? It looks better, at least. The perspective that you'd imagine that I could have, you would say, if I was, like, doing psychedelics and being into, like, proto-New Agey and occult stuff. And, like, dude, they were literally talking about this practitioner, this guy named Sakya Trisden. Like, I was outside. Someone comes outside to smoke a cigarette. I don't smoke cigarettes, but this guy comes up to me, he's talking, and he's like, did you meet him? Did you meet Sakya Trisden? And I was like, yeah, man. Yeah, I did. And he was like, he's amazing, isn't he? In my head, I was like, I don't know, we didn't really talk. But I was like, yeah, he's really cool. And the guy's like, he's descended from sky gods. Their whole family, their whole bloodline is descended from sky gods. They have God blood in them. We're standing on the street on, like, 57th Street in Manhattan. I've only been talking to this guy for, like, 35 seconds. And I'm like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah, that's why they hold this lineage. That's why they're so spiritually powerful. And I was like, that's interesting. I missed that part of, like, Tibetan Buddhism philosophy class where we're learning about high up practitioners being descended from, like, royal sky gods and stuff. And then I met this woman. Let's see, what else am I going to do here? I want to start wrapping this up. I don't know. I feel like I could put some, like, I'm going to put some, like, trees in the background. I'm going to use straight sap green. I'm just going to drop them in. Yeah, I met this woman there, and she was like, oh, did you meet, like, Sakya Trisden and his wife? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, she was like, did you meet his wife? I was like, yeah, she was cool, I guess. And she was like, I've been living with them. Like, I've been one of his students for, like, 10 years. And I was like, wow, this is where I'll wrap up the anecdote. I'm not just rambling. It's, like, has a point. And she was like, I've been living with them for, like, so long, and, like, I love studying with them and all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. And she was like, the first time I went to their house, I saw her, and she was doing her own dishes. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, you're this, like, spiritual royalty, and you're here in your house doing your own dishes. And it just totally blew my mind. And in my mind, I was like, what? I was like, that's the level we're at right now? I was like, yo, I kind of, like, I don't know. I haven't been studying with this guy, but, like, I kind of feel like you shouldn't be impressed that this person's, like, doing their own dishes. Like, what? And it was just, like, really a hardcore, like, cult of personality. And I'm not talking shit about that guy or anyone. I'm just saying maybe the people I met were just, like, really weird. And it was also in New York, which is, like, a really weird place where really weird people congregate. So I'm not saying this is, like, a philosophical indictment, but I met a lot of really weird people, man. And that's where I started questioning some things. I was like, this woman's been studying with this guy for a long time, and she's, like, impressed that his wife does her own dishes. Okay, this is so much better now that we're just kind of, like, going for it, like, going really fast. This is how we should be doing it. This is how we'll be doing it from now on. I'm glad we tried it out doing, like, the really tight way, but doing it really fast is, like, so much better. I'm going to give this skull these, like, huge red eyes. Yeah. I'll take a few more questions. I feel like this is kind of bumping, honestly. And this one's already really, really long, so we'll kind of just go with it for a minute. I mean, if people aren't into it, they'll just, like, leave, right? No one's being forced to, like, be here, right? That was a really good question. Oh, and also my thoughts on Taoism. Okay, wait. How do I want to start wrapping this up? I feel like I should get some outside situation going. How do I want to do that? Well, we're going fast and loose. Maybe I'll regret it. I'm gonna what am I gonna do? I'm gonna lay in some ground here. I'll put in a light blue wash. I'll lay in some ground here, and then we'll start kind of wrapping it up. Maybe it'll be a mistake, but people make mistakes, whatever. Actually, I'm not going to use ultramarine. I don't know if you guys can see, but this color ultramarine, it's like so intense. It's like such an intense blue. You guys see that? That I don't really want to... Actually, it would be kind of hot. It's like ocean on the bottom. I'm going to grab some cerulean blue. Okay, here we go. Perfect. Okay. Someone asked me, what are my thoughts on Taoism? Well, that was the first religious text that I really got into. I think I've talked about it before, so I'm not going to go too hard into it, but reading the Tao Te Ching, that was the first time that I was like, oh, religion is actually kind of tight, and it's not just this really dumb thing like people told me. I thought religion was just I mean, I wasn't hardcore, but I probably had Reddit tier atheism beliefs when I was way younger of just yeah, I bet religion is just people being sheep, right? Why would I care about that? I'm so punk listening to the Lawrence Arms and shit. And then when I finally checked out the Tao Te Ching, I was like, wow, I'm an idiot. This is so awesome and so mind-blowing that was really what kicked off me reading, almost religious texts only for the next how long has it been? 15 years of my life? Way longer than that, probably. No, it hasn't been that long. Actually, it's been 12 years. It's been a little bit of a long time. Let's take a different question. One other kind of thing I can dig into. Do you think psychedelic use is inherently bad? Do you think there's any connection between that and world religions? Yeah, that's something I haven't really talked about on Twitter in a while. It's interesting. I think everyone knows that I'm pretty anti-DMT. I feel really good laying down that position. For sure, I'm definitely anti-DMT. People always ask me about mushrooms and acid. I mean, it's kind of I am against it, but in a different way. I feel very comfortable going on the record and being yo, DMT is... Oh, man, look at this. Look at this rookie maneuver over here. It's cool. We're going to wrap this up soon. I feel very comfortable going on the record and being yeah, whatever. We'll put a yellow border on it. The DMT is inherently bad and kind of evil, honestly. Shouldn't surprise anyone that I think that. Mushrooms and acid, I mean, I feel they're bad, but in a different way. I don't say they're evil. Sometimes people have good experiences on them. What I say about them is that, sometimes people... I need more paint. Sometimes people, will take mushrooms or acid and be oh, wow, I should stop smoking cigarettes. Or, oh, maybe I should, look into religion. Or, oh, wow, I haven't called my grandma in a while. And, I should really take my family more seriously. That does happen sometimes when people take acid or mushrooms. But in general, I feel long-term use of them leads to vexation. That's really the perfect word for it, almost exclusively. So in that way, I think they're kind of bad. It's almost like an illusion that sucks you in. But yeah, I don't know. I could pop off about that. I'll talk about it for a second. No one asked me any other questions yet. Do I feel I'm looking for other questions, but I'll talk about that for a second. Do I think there's any connection to world religions? That's an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, everyone has theories. Let's see. What am I going to do? I kind of want to make it night on this side, so I'm going to mix in a little ultramarine blue. We're approaching the end. This will be at the last 10, 15 minutes. I just feel like I said, we came this far. Might as well give people the satisfaction of filling out the whole page. I don't know. Everyone has all these theories of dude, did you know that secretly every religion comes from people using psychedelics? Oh my God, you never would have guessed. And I used to be into that. I guess you could say I used to subscribe to that, actually. Oh, I gotta get right in that little nook. Perfect. But honestly, I think that if you're not using psychedelics, the evidence for it is not really that good. I mean, yeah, there's some times where you're oh, wow, that's a really interesting coincidence, and that actually does stack up. But for the most part, I feel it's a convenient tautology because people, in religious texts or in recorded religious history have these experiences that are either inexplicable or visionary or mystical, And I feel like it's very easy to come along and be like, oh yeah, you know why that guy had that experience? Because secretly he was on mushrooms. Doesn't that explain everything? And it always leaves me in this place of like, even if I come at it totally open-mindedly, obviously I'm biased against that view now. But even if I come at it totally open-mindedly, I'm like, yeah, I don't know, maybe, but really, like, not really. Like, especially the theories about like Christianity and like secret mushroom use and stuff. I'm kind of just like, I don't know, man. Like, you think that really there's like this huge like secret passing on. I mean, I'm like conspiracy boy, I'm down, but like, you think there's a secret like passing on of like, dude, Jesus was like secretly mushrooms and like Paul was like using mushrooms. Like, I don't know, man. I like to do the sky sometimes where it's half night, half day. Just throwing that out there. And I don't know, what am I throwing down at the bottom? I honestly feel like I should just keep going with these colors. But I want something light. Oh, I know what I'm gonna do. I'll put the yellow down there. That's perfect. Yeah, like in case anyone doesn't know, something interesting to look into is the guy that makes that case the hardest about Christianity and it being connected to mushroom use. You asked me about world religions, but I'm kind of just riffing while I wrap up this painting right now. Is a guy named John Allegro, has a book called The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross. I've actually never seen anyone discuss it on Twitter. I don't know how like underground it is, but yeah, he's basically this guy that makes this whole case about early Christianity being founded on mushroom use. And I read it when I would have been the most open to that view. I was using mushrooms all the time. I was not into Christianity, so I would have been like the guy to like buy into it if someone was going to buy into it. And it's not very convincing. It's really based around all these like linguistic puns from like ancient languages. Like he'll be like, oh dude, like, you know, it says, I'm just gonna put it on the horizon here really quick. Yeah, this is a good call. He'll be like, yeah, it says like, I will build this church. I will build my church on this rock. But like in this language, the word for rock is kind of like the word for mushrooms. So what he's saying is like he's building it on this mushroom. Like Peter is a pun for this ancient word for mushrooms. And you're kind of like, dude, you're like a hardcore PhD who's like at the head of his field. And like, this is what you're giving me right now, man. Like, I don't know. Also, I don't speak like Aramaic, so not very convincing. In general, though, there is some connection, especially in like Nepalese, Northern Indian stuff. I mean, the first book about chakras, this is something that also I'd like to, there's certain facts that like, I don't know, if I have a legacy, I want to propagate them. The first book about chakras, I'm pretty sure, you can fact check me on this, is called the Sattvam Chakra Upanishad. It's from Northern India, and it's actually pretty late in the game. It's only from like, I don't want to misspeak, but it's definitely after 1000 AD. Oh, fuck, I'm kind of messing up because I'm getting really into what I'm talking about. There we go, boom. And it describes the chakras in the body of this goddess whose body is made of datura flowers. So obviously datura is a hallucinogen. So is that a coincidence? Probably not. Some Nepalese shaman hardcore use substances and stuff, but in general, I think it's overhyped. That's how I'll wrap up this question before I go to a different one. So ask me another question if you guys want. I'm almost about to wrap this up. Even the connection into shamanism is kind of overhyped. Like even shamans, like they're not like a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them aren't using like psychedelics in the way that like Western people are. And they're using them kind of as like a smash the glass and like last resort type thing. So my short answer is in general, I think it's overhyped. This looks kind of dope. Okay, I'm going to throw in some grass, put something down on the bottom, and then we're going to wrap this up. I'm actually just going to... This paint also, you can re-wet it. It kind of like reactivates. So if I just get in here with some water, you can see it got lighter. It'll like reactivate. So let's wrap this up. Any other questions? Have you tried songwriting? Dude, you know, man, it's so interesting that you asked me that because the one ability that I really wish that I had is, I guess, the ability that I would call like bardship, like being a bard, like being able to pick up an instrument and sing and like create these like worlds of songs. I really can't do it. I really don't know why I can't sing. I have the ability to sing and I can sing well. Like if I'm talking to someone and I'm like, oh, you know this song, and I start singing it, a few people have been like, wow, I've never heard you sing before. Like, oh, and I'm not like good, but I'm not like really bad. I was in a few, musical groups where like I would sing sometimes. So it's not the ability. Honestly, it's just something about like me, and I feel like just there's something antithetical about me and singing. I really don't know why. It's really strange. It's honestly not to be like dramatic, but it's almost like there's like a curse, like in like some like fairy tales or something. Like what is it in like Little Mermaid or something to make the worst possible parallel? Um, the witch like steals her voice and she like can't sing, and that's like not that I would make it related to Disney, but I was thinking like other fairy tales where people are like made mute by some like magical practice or things like that. Like that's kind of how it feels. Like I open my mouth up to sing and it's just like I don't know. There's like a wall there. There's something blocking it. I did I hate bringing up this part of my life every 2 seconds, but I guess it's just like kind of part of the stream. I'm putting in some hills. So here's a little tip. I'm putting in some hills and I'm mixing in the background color. I mean, not the background. Oh, you can't even see. Fuck, my bad. I'm mixing in the light color with the grass color. So when I put the hills in, it'll kind of seem like they're transparent and like going into the distance. There we go. Boom. Yeah, this shaman that I worked with a little bit back in the day said that singing unburdens your heart. And he said that a lot. And I thought it was a really interesting thing to say. And it always stuck with me. And I don't know, not to be like dramatic, but I feel like there's such this like mental wall with me and singing that like maybe it is because I have this like burden like in my heart or something. I don't know. It kind of freaks me out when I think about it. But I would really like to. I mean, I think that's part of why I like punk music so much is that there's just some, I mean, I used to. I don't actually listen to it anymore. But like that format or even like, wow, those hills look dope. Nice. Like just that format, someone picking up a guitar and making music. I used to like Donovan a lot. And then I realized I didn't even like Donovan's music that much. It was just the format of him like being this guy who was like picking up a guitar and like weaving these like worlds with his guitar. But yeah, I can't do it, man. I really don't know why. Really don't know why. It feels like a witch like put a curse on me. I have a guitar. I have a little dulcimer here. But I just can't do it. And I really don't know why. And it really bothers me a lot. If anyone knows why, let me know. You should give it clouds and stars. Yeah, I'm going to put some stars down. You're thinking too much. You don't think when you sing, you just sing. Yeah, man. That honestly probably is a factor. There's this Charles Bukowski poem, who is only a poet you should read if you're already depressed. But he has this one poem about like driving out in the desert, and there's this line where he's like, I drove all the way out there, and I forget what it is. Like I took my shirt off, and I parked my car, and I looked at the sky, and like I sang for the first time. And I feel like I always remember that poem because I'm kind of like, when is that going to happen? Like, when am I going to have that feeling? I'm going to throw on some orange clouds right now. But, yeah, I don't know. I wish I could. My friends sing. I have friends that are in bands and stuff. And I don't know. Sometimes I have these phases where, like, sometimes I'll pick up a guitar that does not look like a cloud. Or, like, I'll pick up a guitar and I'm like, now's the time. Like, it's finally going to happen. And, like, maybe I'll even, like, write a song or something. But it just doesn't happen. If life was like a MMORPG, that's like the ability I would cultivate is bardship. I would stack up my bard stats and I would try and become a bard. There's something about it. I think for me it's also like Arthurian. I think that's part of why I liked Donovan's music so much is that he is like truly a bard. And like even if you think the music's cheesy and it's like 270s, like I get it, but it's Arthurian. Like I don't know if you guys have read about Arthurian legends. So what I'm doing right now, I'm going to marry the bottom and the top by getting some of these nice orange clouds up near the top also. So this stream's really long. I don't know if we'll have them this long in the future, but like I said, I feel like we came this far. I might as well just like, you know what I mean? I'm not going to like half bake a cake and then end the cooking show before the cake is baked. Am I right? Okay, cool. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I'm going to tilt it. Other questions? Start by covering shit, dude. Oh, yeah, songs? Yeah, man, I know. There are some songs I like. I always felt like there was... I still kind of feel this way. I feel like there's something about, like, the format and energy of punk music that could speak to, like, the highly, like, disaffected, like, angry young guy vibe that we have, like, going on so hard. But I'm not going to be the one to, like, bring it to the masses, unfortunately. It's not going to be me. Okay. Any other questions? The Donovan song about colors is lit. Yeah, you know what's really interesting is that I was talking to one of my friends and I was like, I love how Donovan uses color in his music. And he was like, it's so interesting that you would say that about someone who's writing songs. And yeah, he's like a poet, but he talks about like visuals a lot. I don't know. Bottom middle edge, yeah. Okay, let's see what else should I talk about. This is the home stretch. Okay, boom, boom. Yeah, got rid of that a little bit. This is actually looking pretty dope. Honestly, the face is kind of whatever. If I made this a real image, I'd probably change it. But whatever, man. I'm going to throw in a little moon up here. It's also like wasn't really about anything. I was honestly just thinking about the vibe of like being outside near where I live. That's all I was thinking about while painting this. Sometimes it's good to like not think about it too much. There we go. This little fat moon up here. What am I going to put down below? This looks pretty good. This looks pretty good. I feel like I need one like thing just like right here. You know what I'm going to put in the distance? Ugh, I wish I could put a tower in, but I feel like I just don't have enough room. I feel like I don't have enough room. I could put a dead snake with like the blood. Sometimes I feel like I use the same symbol like over and over and over like too much. Let's see if I can grab one more question before I do the last like little stretch here. Any other questions that anyone wants to ask me? I just want to dig into something fat before I wrap this up. You know what I'm going to put down here? I'm going to put a little crown down here, and then we're going to wrap this up. But it's yellow. I need something, like, dark. This is the live, like, thinking process. I could put another skull. You know what? I am going to put a crown. That was my first instinct. I'm going to go with the first instinct. Yo, a well. Fuck. All right. Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. Nice. Okay, let's do that. Yeah, get a little gray in there. All right, I'll put this well in, and then we'll wrap it up. That was a pretty good call. That was a pretty good call. I wish I could give out, like on Twitch, you can give out like awards to people in the chat. You get a little award right now, bro. All right, so let's see. Let's see if I can mix like a good gray. I kind of want it to be like a little more red than that. With the gray, you can kind of just go for it and get like a few colors together and then hit it with the white. It's kind of like too tan though, honestly, so I need a little bit more blue to like balance it out. You know what, actually, even though a well is a really ballin' idea, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to get it too detailed. I'm going to put in a little like, I know what I'm going to do. This is going to be hot. That was a good idea. Whoever had that idea, that was popping. And if I do this as like a digital image, I would do that. But instead, I want to bring the sun down, and I want to kind of marry, like I was talking before about like this being like Adam's skull. Not that I was thinking of it as Adam's skull, but if you've seen like some images, they have like Adam's skull underneath the cross, and then I'm going to put this like drop of blood in. I like sometimes using symbols where it kind of has like a weird flavor to it, where it like almost like pushes against all the like, hold on one second. Yeah. Oh, yeah, dude. Cool. Where it kind of like pushes against the vibe of everything else. Like, let's be real. Like, sometimes I really hate using this word. I'm going to use it on the stream near the end because if you watch this whole thing, that's real, and I really appreciate that. Sometimes the images border up against, oh my God, I'm going to say it. It's going to be painful. Kind of a cute vibe. I hate it. Don't know why. A witch cursed me to paint cute things, and now I just roll with it. So sometimes I like to use that to my advantage. I'm just joking, by the way. I do it on purpose for this reason. I like to use it to my advantage where, like, sometimes the whole image will have, like, a kind of innocuous is really the word I should use. An innocuous kind of, like, nice, friendly flavor. And then I can put in something that's, like, kind of dark and, like, weird that doesn't really, like, go with everything else. And I love doing that with artwork. It reminds me of Bill Watterson, the guy that drew Calvin and Hobbes. He said that one reason why... Oh, perfect. That was the perfect call. One reason why he liked... oh, yeah, this is dope. We're going to wrap this up right now. One reason why he liked doing... I'm trying to think if I should just try and like fix the face a little bit or if I should just let it go. If anyone wants to ask me a question, ask me now because I'm going to... Right when I finish this, I'm going to wrap this up because I don't want it to be like too crazy long on YouTube. So if anyone has any other... Yeah, Blue River. That would be dope. I mean, we could keep going forever, but we've been going hard for like a really long time. There we go. Nice. Make it look like her face is poking out of like a little hood right there. Okay. You know, honestly, I feel... Let's see. Can I get to focus? Yeah. I feel pretty good about that. It actually looks pretty dope. I'm gonna wrap this up right now. I'm gonna put a few little stars in on the night side just to make it look like night. But we're going to wrap this up. I don't know how long this took. It's probably really long. It's 2.5 hours. That's completely insane. Okay. Well, if you watch this whole thing, like I said, I called it a test because I wanted to see what the vibe would be like. So now we know for next time. I'm just going to jump right into the kind of like aggressive, I don't put in too many, the kind of aggressive, like okay with making mistakes mode. Oh, it looks good with the stars. Fuck yeah. Okay, let's wrap this up. Yeah, that's it. That looks good. Okay, we're done. Perfect. I'm going to get this out of here. And let's see, will it focus? Yeah, I feel really good about that. Okay, so if you watch this whole thing, I really appreciate that. That's really awesome. What I was going to say, I'll wrap up my last thought and kind of just talk about how this went. Bill Watterson said he liked doing comic strips because people never expect them to be deep. They kind of just expect them to be like funny jokes, and they're reading them and having their morning coffee. Sometimes I like to incorporate that into my art. Like there'll be like a bunch of like, nice looking like little fun little things, and someone would look at it and be like, oh, what's this like cute little weird thing? And then, maybe I have like a hand reaching in from the side and there's like blood pouring out of it, or like the dead snake thing, or there'll be like just a symbol that kind of communicates to the viewer that like, yo, there's actually a little bit more going on here than like you would normally think. That's why I put this drop of blood in. I felt like it just kind of like perfectly kind of set that little stage. It kind of offsets like, oh, what is this? Like a what am I looking at? Is it like a weird, is it trying to tell me something? Like, I don't know. I could talk about the symbolism and stuff, but we'll do more later. What else was I going to say? Oh yeah, how this went. If you watch this whole thing, that's so legit. I really appreciate that. Even if you just tuned in later, that's cool too. So this was the first one with painting. If you watch this for a while, it would be really cool if you want to hit me up on Twitter and like just let me know if it was like cool or not. Not cool. Like obviously I know that I'm very cool and charming and interesting, but yeah, I'm doing it, so I don't know how it looks to you, the viewer. So just, if you want to bump me, let me know. I was mentioning before, I went to travel to my grandpa's funeral like last week, 2 weeks ago, and I gave this speech. And right when I got off the stage, I turned to my wife and I was like, how was it? Because like when you're the one talking, you have no idea how it went. So I hope this went well. I hope it was cool for you. That was it. Yeah. If you were here the whole time in the beginning, I was going super tight and trying to make everything perfect. But I think pretty obviously once I kicked into like loose experimental mode, it was way more interesting and things went like way faster and got more visually interesting. So next time we'll just kick into like loose visual mode and just like get it going fast right off the bat. I'm really glad I did this though, so I could like feel it out with you guys. And yeah, I'm really glad you guys checked it out. And that's really it, man. In general, I love all internet weirdos. Thank you for being around, being a part of the strange sphere that we inhabit. I don't say like and subscribe at the end of my videos. Make sure you read some cool stuff. Call some people in your family. Call people in your family, younger people, older people. Stay in touch with them. Pray before going to bed. Have crazy dreams. That's what I'm going to say at the end of my streams, I guess. And that's it, guys. If you check this out, I really, really appreciate it. I love doing this. And yeah, I hope you had a good time. Thanks a lot, guys.